The bucket is heavier than I am, and the slag inside it is still glowing. I carry it up the ramp because Gorm is watching, and Gorm is the demon who breaks a rib in somebody every time the line slows down. My name is Rook. I am 23 years old, and I have hauled slag out of this pit under the fortress of Ashvale for 11 of those years. My whole world is 400 steps long. Up the ramp, dump the bucket, back down. 400 steps each way, 110 trips a day. I know the number because counting is the only thing down here that belongs to me. Today the boy ahead of me is Tam. He is 9 years old, his arms shake like wet rope, and halfway up the ramp his bucket tips and a river of orange slag goes hissing across the stone. Gorm comes down the line fast, horns first, hooves cracking on rock, and I do the stupid thing. I step in front of the boy, and I say the bucket was mine. The whip takes me twice across the back. A demon whip does not simply cut, it burns while it cuts, and I go down on one knee on the hot stone, and my mouth fills with the taste of old iron. Gorm crouches until his face is level with mine. He smells like sulfur and rancid grease. He says, "One more word out of you, meat, and I feed you to the hound while the boy watches." So I say nothing. I pick up the bucket. That is the entire shape of my life, and I made peace with it years ago, the way a dog makes peace with a short chain. Then blue letters open in the air a hand's span from my face, not painted on the wall, not drawn in the smoke, hanging there in front of my eyes, glowing cold, moving when I move my head. The letters say, Channel 3109, unranked, is now live. Current audience, 41 viewers. Welcome to the Multiverse feed. I have been hit in the head before. I know what that feels like. This is not that. Under the letters, a column of smaller writing starts scrolling, and the writing is people talking about me. Somebody called Grape Soda says, "Oh great, another mud world." Somebody called Sleepy Axe says, "Is that a slag pit? I love slag pits." Somebody called Auntie Moore says, "That poor boy is far too thin." I stand in the middle of the ramp holding a bucket of molten waste while 41 strangers I cannot see discuss my ribs. My first clear thought is that I have finally cooked my brain. My second thought comes when Gorm turns around. Because I have stopped walking, and in this pit stopping is a crime with a fixed sentence. Gorm unhooks the iron ring from his belt and whistles 2 notes, and down at the water trough, the pit hound lifts its head. The hound is the size of a plow ox. It has no eyes, and it does not need any. Grape Soda says, "Oh, dogfight." Nine Toes says, "The human has 8 seconds." Auntie Moore says, "Somebody do something, I cannot watch this." Then a new line drops into the column, gold instead of white. Auntie Moore has tipped 100 coins. Auntie Moore says, "Buy him something, anything, hurry." The blue letters swell up so wide they cover the whole pit. Donation threshold reached. 100 coins converts to 1 pocket tier delivery. Sourcing from Origin World Earth. Stand clear. Something screams in the air above the pit. Not a voice. The sound a rock makes coming down fast. Then a crate the size of a footlocker slams into the slag beside me and cracks open along one edge. The hound is already running. 12 strides out, 11, 10. I get my hands into the crate, and the first thing I touch is a bag of something crinkly. The second thing is metal, and it fits my palm like it was measured for me. I have never seen a gun in my life. Nobody in Ashvale has. But the blue letters are helpful in a way nothing in my world has ever been helpful, and they lay a little diagram over the thing in my hand. Pocket tier delivery. 1 handgun of Earth manufacture, 15 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the pipe, 16 total. Also, 1 bag of salt and vinegar potato chips. The hound is 4 strides away and coming low. 9 Toes says, both hands, point, squeeze. I do exactly what the god says because I have no better ideas and no time to find one. The sound is unbelievable. In a stone pit, it lands like a punch that hits every wall at once. The hound's head snaps sideways and the animal skids to a stop against my legs. Dead, tongue out, 400 pounds of it. 200 slaves on the ramp stop moving. Not 1 bucket goes up, not 1 goes down. In 11 years, I have never heard this pit quiet, and the quiet is so total I can hear the slag ticking as it cools. The blue letters go crazy. Viewers, 180. Viewers, 400. Viewers, 906. The scrolling column becomes a waterfall and I cannot read it, and I do not need to, because Gorm is coming. Gorm is 9 feet of demon overseer with a whip in one hand and a spike hammer in the other, and he is screaming that he will pull my spine out through my mouth. He has done that before. I watched him do it to a man named Orin. I raise the gun with both hands the way the god told me, and I shoot Gorm through the knee. He goes down so hard the ramp shakes. Then he does something I have wanted for 11 years without ever letting myself picture it. He grabs my ankle and he begs. He says, "Mercy, mercy, I have coin, I have a wife in the upper barracks, take my whip, take my ring." He is crying. Sulfur tears, but tears. Behind him, 200 people are watching their overseer beg a bucket boy. Grape Soda says, "Finish him." Nine Toes says, "No, keep him talking, the crowd is learning." Auntie Moore says, "Do not let the boy see this, the little one, cover his eyes." I look at Tam, and Tam is not covering anything. He is standing on the ramp with both fists in the air and no sound coming out, like he is screaming inside a room with a locked door. So I take Gorm's iron key ring off his belt and I say, loud enough for the whole pit, that the slag stops today. And then, because the thing in my hand only has 14 rounds left, I do not shoot him again. I say, "Gorm, crawl up the ramp and tell the keep that the pit belongs to the pit now." He crawls. He leaves a wet track behind him, and every step of that track is being watched by people who have carried buckets for him since they could walk. Viewers, 4,100. The gold lines start coming faster. Somebody called Warhorse tips 50 coins. Sleepy Axe tips 20. Little Fen tips 2 coins and apologizes for being poor. Then, a new box opens in the letters, and this one has a countdown in it. Audience challenge, 30 seconds to vote. The audience may dare the streamer. A completed dare pays double from every viewer who voted. The dare on the board is from Grape Soda, and it reads, "Make him eat the flavor packet out of the noodles dry, no water, all of it." I have no idea what a flavor packet is. I dig back into the crate, and under the chips there is a brick of dried noodles in a bag, and inside that bag a small silver envelope of red powder. The vote closes. 11,000 voted yes, 91 voted no. Auntie Moore voted no, and says the boy needs real food, not chemicals. Grape Soda says it builds character. I tear the envelope open, and I pour the whole thing into my mouth, and it is like licking the inside of a forge. My eyes water, my throat closes, my nose starts running. So I stand there in front of 200 slaves and a dead hound, coughing red dust, while a hidden crowd from every world there is laughs itself sick at me. Then the letters go gold from edge to edge. Dare completed. Double payout applied. 11,000 contributors. Total 22,000 coins. 10,000 converts to one heavy tier delivery. 2 crates come down this time. The first one has a shotgun in it, a fat, ugly thing with a wooden grip, and 8 red shells in a paper box, and the letters call it a pump action. The second one has an axe with a red handle made for chopping down doors. I stand in a slag pit, holding a gun in one hand and a fire axe in the other, with a bag of chips under my arm, and 22,000 strangers screaming at me from outside the sky. And the first thing I do with all of it is walk to the chain line. The chain line is 140 people locked wrist to wrist through a running bar. Gorm's key ring opens the collar locks one at a time, and it is slow, so I use the axe on the bar itself. 3 swings between each pair of hands. A voice from down the line says, "Careful, human, you are cutting on the wrong side of the pin." She is chained 6th from the end. A demon woman, adult, taller than me, dark gray skin and a broken horn on the left side, and she is wearing what used to be a good coat about 6 years ago. Her collar is not an ordinary slave collar. It is bronze, and it has numbers stamped all the way around it, and it is welded, not locked. I ask what the numbers mean, and she says, 940 marks. She says that is what I owe, and the collar comes off when the ledger says it comes off and not 1 day sooner. Her name is Vessa. Before the debt, she built siege engines for the Ashvale legions for 19 years, and she tells me this while pointing out that my axe swing is wasting half its force on the stone underneath. So I let her show me. She sets the bar on 2 stones with an air gap, taps the spot with her knuckle, and my next swing goes through it in 1 hit. 140 people come off the line in under 4 minutes. Viewers, 9,200. Nine Toes says, "Finally, somebody in this feed with training." Auntie Moore says, she looks tired, feed her too. Then the pit whistle goes, the long one, and Vessa's head comes up. She says 4 guards, upper gallery, crossbows, and they will not come down the ramp because the ramp is a shooting lane. They will come along the water channel. I say, I have a gun. She says, how many shots? I say 14 in this one and 8 in the fat one. She says, then stop wasting them on doors, and she picks up a crowbar off the floor and hands me the axe like we have been doing this for years. We take the water channel. She goes first because she knows the stone, and she puts the crowbar through the first guard's helmet before he can lift his crossbow. The second one shoots and misses, and I shoot and do not. The third guard drops his weapon and runs, and the fourth one is the ledger clerk, a thin demon named Pell who carries the debt book, and he holds the book up over his head like paper is armor. I take the book. 900 pages of names and numbers, everybody in this pit and what they owe, and Vessa's hand is on my arm before I get any ideas about fire. She says no. She says, that book is the only proof any of us exist. 22,000 coins buys other things too, and I am learning the price list fast. Pocket tier, 100. Heavy tier, 10,000. Vehicle tier, 100,000. Anything above that has a lock on it I cannot read yet. I have 12,000 coins left. Vessa is looking at the dead guard's crossbow, and then at the empty shells on the floor where I fired, and she crouches and picks one up and turns it over twice. She sniffs the inside of the brass. She says, this is not magic. She says, this is a very small cannon, and somebody has already solved the hard part, and I would like to know what the gray powder is. That is when the horn sounds from the upper gate, not the pit whistle. The war horn, 3 long notes, which even a bucket boy knows means riders coming down from the keep. Pell the clerk is on his knees with his hands folded, and he is delighted to tell us exactly who is coming. He says, Knight Captain Dolmac, 30 riders, and he says it the way you would announce weather that is about to kill somebody else. Viewers, 19,000. The chat fills with one line over and over, and it is Grape Soda starting it, and about 6,000 people copying it. Give him a tank. Give him a tank. Give him a tank. I do not know what a tank is. I ask the letters, and the letters tell me it costs 2 million coins, and I laugh out loud in the middle of a pit full of freed slaves waiting for me to tell them what to do. Vessa asks what is funny. I tell her that somewhere outside the world a crowd of gods wants to buy me a wagon that costs 2 million coins, and she says, then give them a reason. I climb up on the dead hound so everybody can see me. 140 free hands, 200 more still holding buckets, 1 gun with 11 rounds, 1 shotgun with 8 shells, 1 axe, 1 fire door key ring, and a demon engineer who thinks in numbers. I say, Dolmac comes down that ramp in about 6 minutes. I say the ramp is 400 steps and it is the only way in, and 30 riders on that ramp are 30 riders in a stone tube. Vessa is already moving. She has Tam and 11 other kids hauling the slag buckets, not up the ramp, but to the top of the water channel where the sluice gate is, and she is telling the strongest men to break the sluice pins with the axe. I ask her what we are building, and she says, a river of molten waste with a gate on it. She says, your little cannon has 11 shots, and a river has as many as we can pour. 9 Toes tips 1,000 coins and says, listen to the engineer. Auntie Moore tips 500 and says she does not approve of any of this, but she approves of the girl. Viewers, 31,000. 6 hours ago, my whole audience was 41 bored strangers and a bag of chips, and now the number climbs every time somebody down here picks up a hammer. I get everybody who cannot fight into the ore galleries behind the smelter, because I have counted the shells twice, and 8 is a small number when 30 men in armor are coming. Then I take the shotgun, and I go stand at the bottom of the ramp on my own. I am not a brave man. I am standing here because the letters told me something 2 minutes ago that changed the way I plan to live. The letters said, audience retention warning, and then they said, streamers who hide lose viewers, viewers are coins, coins are deliveries. The gods will pay for a fight in the open. They will not pay for a man in a hole. So here I am in the open, in the mouth of a stone tube, with a river of glowing waste behind a broken gate above me, and a demon woman up there holding the pin, and 30 horses coming down loud. The first rider sees me and does not slow down. Why would he? A human, alone, holding a fat black stick, standing in front of an army in a corridor. Behind him, Dolmek's voice comes down the ramp, and he is not even shouting at me. He is shouting at his men to keep formation, because to Dolmek, I am not the problem. I am the paperwork at the end of the ride. I count to 3, which is how long it takes the first horse to close the gap, and then I do not shoot the rider. I shoot the ceiling. The stone comes down in a slab about the size of a door, and the first 2 horses go into it at full speed. The tube fills with screaming and dust and iron, and the whole column stops. And stopped is all I ever wanted. Then I turn and I run and I yell one word up at the sluice gate, and Vesa pulls the pin. 11,000 pounds of molten slag comes down the water channel and turns onto the ramp. It does not roar, it sighs, and that soft sound is worse than any roar. And then 30 riders in a stone tube meet the front edge of it. Viewers, 104,000. The gold lines are coming so fast the column cannot draw them all, and it starts stacking them into a single number that keeps climbing while I stand there breathing dust. 9 of them get out the top. Dolmak is 1, because officers ride at the back. 21 do not. Every horse is gone, and I am sorry about the horses and about exactly none of the men. Vesa comes down the channel, wiping her hands on her ruined coat, and she looks at what we did with a very flat expression. She says, "That was 200 years of accumulated waste heat, and we spent it in 9 seconds. I say we can make more." She says, "Yes, but we cannot make more of my sluice gate." And she is right. The gate is slag now, welded shut forever, and the pit's only cooling channel is a solid orange scar. That is the first bill I ever run up, and I write it in my head where I keep the counting. 1 sluice gate, 1 shotgun shell, 11 pistol rounds left, 9 riders who saw my face and rode home. Then the delivery letters open again, and this time the number in them is not 100 or 10,000. Total tips received during engagement, 146,000 coins. Vehicle tier unlocked, 1 delivery available. And the whole chat, 100,000 strangers from worlds I will never see, start spamming the same 3 words at a bucket boy standing in a dead pit. Give him a tank. I ask the letters what 100,000 coins actually buys, because I have learned in the last hour that these people will scream for a thing and then not pay for it. The letters give me a list. Vehicle tier includes 1 wheeled machine of ordinary earth manufacture, or 1 pallet of industrial goods of equivalent price. Selection window, 4 minutes. Grape Soda is already writing the word tank in capital letters. Warhorse wants a boat, which is interesting because we are 900 feet underground. Sleepy Axe wants a truck full of beer. Then Vesa comes and stands next to me holding the brass shell she took off the floor, and she asks one question that decides the next year of my life. She asks, "Can they send the machine that makes these?" So I ask the letters, and the letters say yes, and they list it out like a shopping bill. 1 reloading press, 5,000 primers, 2 kegs of smokeless powder, 400 pounds of lead, 1 bench grinder, 1 drum of fuel, and a generator to burn it in. Total, 98,400 coins, which is nearly every coin those strangers have thrown at me. I say buy it, and Vesa lets out a breath like she has been holding it for 19 years. The chat does not like this. I watch it happen in real time, and it stings worse than the whipping. Grape Soda says, boring. Somebody says, he bought a workshop. I came here for a dogfight. Somebody else says, unsubscribing. Viewers, 90,000. Viewers, 71,000. Viewers 60,000 and falling, and every viewer walking out the door is coins I will not have when something with wings comes down that ramp. 9 Toes tips 1,000 coins and says one line. He says, "The smart ones are the ones worth watching. Stay put, this human is building an army." I file that away as the first real rule of my new life. The crowd pays for spectacle, and the crowd walks out on homework, and I cannot survive on either one alone. The pallet comes down through a hole that opens in the ceiling of the world, and it lands in the slag with a boom that puts everyone on the floor. Wooden crates, strapped, stenciled in a language Vesa cannot read, and I cannot either. She opens the press crate first. She goes very quiet. Then she sits down on the slag floor with the press in her lap like a woman holding a newborn, and she says, 19 years, I asked the legions for a machine like this. She says, do you understand what you just did, human? You did not buy me a weapon. You bought me the thing that makes weapons. weapons, and those are two different purchases. I tell her the truth, which is that I would not know a good machine from a bad one, and she says no, you would not. So from now on, the buying list goes through me. The bench grinder is the one thing I understand immediately. I feed it off the generator, and when the wheel comes up to speed, I put her welded bronze collar against it. It takes 90 seconds. Sparks go everywhere, and the whole pit crowds in to watch. And when the collar falls off in two pieces, Vesa touches her own throat like she is checking whether it is still there. 940 marks. She picks up the piece with the numbers on it and puts it in her coat pocket. And she does not throw it away, and I do not ask why. Then we do it 139 more times. Every deck collar in the pit against that grinder wheel, one by one, and by the time the fuel drum is down a quarter, the floor is covered in bronze halves. Pell the clerk watches the whole thing from a rock with the debt book on his knees, and when I come for him, he starts talking fast about how none of this is legal. I put the book in front of him and I say, strike them. All of them. Write it in ink and sign it with your seal and read every name out loud so the owner hears it. He does it. It takes an hour and 11 minutes. A thin demon clerk in a torn robe reading 140 names into a dead pit, while the people who own those names stand there and listen to themselves being made free on paper. Auntie Moore tips 5,000 coins and says, that was better than the dog. Nine Toes says, that was the most dangerous thing this human has done today, and he does not know it yet. Viewers, 66,000 and climbing again. Freeing people on paper turns out to be better entertainment than freeing them with an axe, and I do not pretend to understand the crowd that feeds me. Then I sit down with the book myself because Vesa has pointed out something I was too slow to see. The book does not only list debts, it lists trades, because the keep taxes a demon by his skill. 382 people in this pit. I go through the pages and I count 11 smiths, 6 of them with hands still good enough to hold a hammer, 9 miners who can read a rock face, 4 charcoal burners, 1 woman who used to run a kitchen for 200 soldiers, 91 people who can fight, and by fight I mean swing something heavy for 2 minutes without falling over. That number is the one I write on the back of my hand. Food for 4 days if nobody eats much. 1 gun with 11 rounds. 1 fat gun with 7 shells, 19 crossbows off the dead guards, and 106 bolts, and a press that turns brass into more of itself, if we can find the rest of the recipe. Vesa says sulfur is no trouble. Ashvale sits on a sulfur shelf, and the smelter has been eating it for 2 centuries. Charcoal is no trouble either. We have 4 burners and a dead forest over our heads. Saltpeter she can pull out of the old latrine pits, and she describes those pits the way other people describe a good wine, which is when I start to understand who I am working with. She says, give me 19 days and I give you shells. Then she looks up the ramp and says, they will not give us 19 days. They give us 4 hours. The horn comes again, 1 note, held. Tam is up in the gallery with his eyes over the lip of the ramp, and he yells down that there is a white cloth on a spear. A parley. 2 demons come down the slag ramp on foot, stepping around the cooling scar of what we poured, and one of them is dragging a leg behind him and using a spear as a crutch. Gorm. 6 hours ago, he crawled up this ramp begging, and now he is back with a bandage the size of a saddle on his knee, and behind him walks a demon in a gray silk coat, carrying a folding stool and a set of brass scales. The silk one introduces himself as Assessor Sarn of the Ashvale Chamber. He unfolds the stool. He sits down on it in the middle of a pit full of people who hate him, and he opens a ledger of his own. He says he is not here to fight. He says he is here to price the incident. That is his word for it, incident. He reads me the bill in a bored voice. 21 riders at 90 marks a head, 30 horses at 40, 1 sluice gate, 1 hound, 1 overseer's knee, and a full year of pit output at 900 pounds of refined iron the month. Total, 11,400 marks, payable in iron or in bodies, and he says the chamber takes bodies at a fixed rate of 9 marks each, which is how I learn what my whole life is worth on paper. 9 marks. A demon can buy 9 of me for the price of 1 dead horse. Sarn taps his ledger and offers me terms. The pit resumes work tomorrow. I hand myself over. Everyone else keeps their hands. He says it is generous, and I think he honestly believes it. The chat has never been this loud. The column is a solid wall of white and gold. Then the challenge box opens, 30 seconds to vote, and the dare on the board is not from grape soda this time. It is from Auntie Moore. The dare reads, make the man in the silk coat carry a bucket up the ramp. 94,000 yes, 400 no. I love these people. I do not touch Sarn. I take his brass scales instead, and I hold them up, and I say to the pit, loud, that the chamber prices a man at 9 marks and a horse at 40. Say it back to me. 9 marks, 40 for the horse. 300 voices say it back, and Sarn's ears go flat against his skull, because he has just done his arithmetic in front of the wrong audience. Then I put a bucket in his hands. I do not hit him, and I do not point a gun at him. I say, 400 steps, assessor, and every man here has done it 11 times today, and you will do it once, and then you will walk home and tell your chamber what a human hour costs. He looks at Gorm. Gorm looks at his own bandaged knee, then at me, then at the floor, and says nothing at all. Gorm has learned something the chamber has not. Sarn carries the bucket. Empty, because I am not a monster. 400 steps up a slag ramp in a gray silk coat with 382 people counting the steps out loud behind him, and at step 206 his stool bearer starts crying. Dare completed, 94,000 contributors, double payout, 211,000 coins. At the top of the ramp, Sarn turns around, and he has his composure back, and he says the thing he came here to say. He says, the chamber does not send riders twice. He says, the chamber sends the tax collector. Then he says a name, and I watch every demon in my pit go the color of wet ash. Scarvath. I ask Vesa what Scarvath is while we walk back down. She does not answer for 11 steps. Then she says, when I built engines for the legions, we had a rule. We never built anything that had to survive Scarvath, because nothing does. She says he is a red dragon, 90 feet from nose to tail, and he has collected the Ashvale iron tax for 260 years, and the last province that came up short is a glass field now with the shapes of houses still in it. I ask when he comes. She says the tax rides on the new moon, which is 6 days out, and then she says the thing that tells me she has already decided to stay. She says 6 days is not 19, so we work at night. We work at night. All of it. And I want it written down somewhere what 400 freed slaves can do in 6 days, because I was standing in the middle of it, and I still do not believe it. The charcoal burners take the dead forest above the pit and turn it into 11 wagon loads of charcoal. The miners open the old sulfur gallery the keep sealed 40 years ago because it kept killing people, and they open it carefully, and it kills nobody. Bess, the woman who ran a kitchen for 200 soldiers, takes over the latrine pits and boils saltpeter out of the leach beds in 6 copper vats, and she does it while telling a story about a general who could not hold his wine. Vesa's mill grinds the 3 of them together at 15 parts, 3 parts, 2 parts, and she tests every batch by burning a spoonful on a slate and timing the flash against her own pulse. Batch 1 goes up too slow. Batch 2 takes her eyebrows off. Batch 3 she looks at for a long moment, then says, this one, and she writes the numbers in chalk on the smelter wall where anybody can read them. That chalk is worth more than everything else in this pit. Whatever happens to me, those numbers stay on that wall, and 100 people have already copied them onto slate. Then the press. Vesa has 11 brass shells off the pit floor and 37 crossbow bolts she cuts down for lead, and she sits at that bench for 2 nights with Tam, holding a lamp over her shoulder. 20 reloads on the 3rd morning, we take them into the ore gallery, and I put all 20 into a slag block. 12 go off, 5 make a noise like a wet cough, 3 do nothing at all. Vesa is delighted. 12 out of 20 on hand mixed powder and shaved lead. She says, by the new moon, I will have you 30 that work, and she is right, and 30 small holes is still nothing at all against a dragon. I spend 600 coins on pocket tier while she works, 1 pair of binoculars, which the letters call an optical instrument, and which Tam takes over so completely that I never get them back. He sits up in the gallery with those things stuck to his face for 2 days, counting the road, and he is the one who tells me about the dust on the 5th night when Dolmak comes back early. 60 riders and no white cloth this time, and a demon in a red hood walking behind them who Vesa says is a fire priest, which means they are not coming down here to talk about iron. They are coming to burn the pit before the dragon arrives, so the chamber can tell Scarvath the account is settled and keep its own name clean. I put every fighter in the ore galleries because the galleries have 3 mouths and the ramp has 1. Then we do the thing Vesa suggested, which is the meanest idea anyone has had all week. We leave the buckets on the ramp. 200 slag buckets in a line going up, exactly the way they sit at shift change. So from the top it looks like the pit is working and nobody is waiting for anybody. Dolmek's riders come down at a walk. The fire priest starts his chant at the 3rd turn and his hands are already glowing when Tam, up in the gallery, drops a rock on the sluice pin. There is no molten slag left. We spent all of it. What comes down the channel this time is 11 barrels of water off the cooling pond, which does nothing at all to a rider in armor, and everything to a fire priest in the middle of a chant. He goes out like a candle in a bucket. His own men trample him because horses do not care about clergy, and in those 6 seconds of confusion, Vesa's first cannon speaks. Her cannon is a smelter pipe, 4 feet of it, banded with iron hoops, lashed onto an ore cart, loaded with 2 pounds of her 3rd batch and 11 pounds of gravel. It is the ugliest weapon in the history of war. It takes the front 11 riders off their horses in one breath. Then the pipe splits along the seam, jumps off the cart, and breaks a man's leg on our side, and I would trade that leg again for what those 11 riders looked like. After that, it is close work in the dark. 12 reloads in my pistol, 7 shells in the fat gun, 91 people with hammers in a tunnel against armored cavalry that cannot turn around. We win in 19 minutes. Dolmak gets out again because Dolmak always gets out, and I put 4 shots after him and hit nothing but stone. 11 of ours are dead. A man named Bost, who came off the chain line 3 days ago and had already carved his sister's name into the handle of his hammer, is one of the 11. I sit down next to him for a while afterward, which is not something the chat pays for. Viewers drop by 9,000 while I sit there and I let every one of them go. Then I get up and I write Bost on the smelter wall next to Vesa's powder numbers, and I tell 371 people that every name on this wall gets paid for, not avenged, paid for, with interest in public, where the chamber can watch. Viewers, 130,000. Somewhere out beyond the sky, a crowd of gods just paid me for a promise I made to a dead man, and I would have made it for free. Up top, the sun comes over the ridge and Tam is on the lip with his binoculars, and this time he does not shout down to me. He climbs all the way back through the galleries to find me in person, which is how I know it is bad. He says, "Rook, the road is empty." He says, "But there is something on the mountain behind the keep, and it is red and it is moving, and every bird between here and the river is going the other way." And down in the corner of my blue letters, where the chat keeps its running joke alive, the little number ticks over. Tank Fund, 209,000 coins of 2 million. 6 days become 1 day. On the last morning before the new moon, I stand in the middle of the pit and take inventory out loud, because saying it out loud is the only way I know to keep from lying to myself. 371 people. 30 reloaded rounds that work, plus 11 shotgun shells Vesa built by hand and does not trust. 2 cannons now, properly banded this time, 10 iron hoops each, and a hardwood cradle. 9 spears with smelter steel heads, 206 crossbow bolts, 400 pounds of powder in 6 sealed barrels, kept apart from each other in 4 different galleries, because Vesa says 1 lucky spark should never cost us everything. And against all of that, 1 red dragon 90 feet long, who has never once had to negotiate. I ask the letters the plain question. I ask what heavy tier sells that can hurt a thing that size. The letters lay out a menu like a butcher's window. Hunting rifle with a scope, 9,000 coins. Anti-material rifle, 40,000. Recoilless launcher of the type Earth armies keep for armored wagons, 60,000 for the tube, 15,000 for each rocket. I have 211,000 coins in the bank and Vesa reading over my shoulder, and she does the arithmetic before I do. She says, the tube and 2 rockets, 90,000, and keep the rest in coin for the small deliveries, because small deliveries win the day after the big one. Then she taps the line about the rockets and asks the question that separates her from every other person I have ever met. She asks, does it come with instructions? It comes with instructions. It also comes with a picture of a man on a card demonstrating where not to stand, and Vesa reads that card 11 times and then makes everybody in the pit stand behind a line she scratches in the slag. Grape Soda says, finally, real content. 9 Toes tips 2,000 coins and says, backblast, mind the backblast, do not fire it in the tunnel. Auntie Moore says she is going to make tea and lie down. Viewers, 304,000, and every one of them has come to watch a slave in a burned shirt argue with a mountain. I do not blame them. I would watch it too. Then the challenge box opens and this dare is the worst one yet. It reads, bow to the dragon first, all the way down, then tell him the tax is cancelled. 280,000 vote yes. That is the crowd I feed. Scarvath comes at noon, and he does not come alone. Tam sees him first from the gallery, and Tam does not have to describe it, because the light changes. A shadow with a shape crosses the whole floor of the pit, and every lamp in it looks suddenly cheap. 3 smaller drakes circle above him, black and quick, maybe 20 feet each, and behind and below on the road come 100 soldiers of the chamber and 11 wagons, and Assessor Sarn on a mule at the front with his ledger open. They come to the lip of the pit, and then the red one lands, and everything I planned for 6 days becomes a list of small ideas. He puts himself down on the upper terrace where the ore scales are, and the terrace cracks under him. 260 years of collecting has made him fat in the shoulders and slow in the neck. None of that matters at all, because the heat coming off his flanks makes the air over the ramp wobble like water. He looks down 400 steps at a human in a slave shirt. Then he speaks, and his voice is not a roar. It is dry and patient and almost kind, like an old landlord explaining rent. He says, I am Scarvath. I have collected the iron of this province since before your grandmother's grandmother was sold, 900 pounds monthly. The chamber tells me the account is 11,400 marks behind. Sarn hurries to add that the shortfall includes 21 riders and 30 horses, and Scarvath tells him to be quiet, and Sarn goes quiet so fast his mouth clicks. Then the dragon says the thing that makes my stomach drop, because it is reasonable. He says you killed an overseer, and you freed a chain line. Both are ordinary. Every century somebody does it. Usually, I eat him. He says occasionally I hire him. He says, you have 300 workers who obey you, and I have 4 provinces where the ore comes out slow because the overseers are stupid. Come up here, hand me the 2 guns, and be my collector in the north. And for about 2 heartbeats I actually think about it. I want it written down that I thought about it. A warm bed, a title, a whip of my own, and 371 people going back down that ramp with buckets, while I ride a mule and keep the ledger. Then I look at the smelter wall where Bost is written in chalk under a powder recipe. So I do the dare. I bow all the way down, forehead almost to the slag, the deepest bow of my life, and 300 people watch me do it, and I feel them all stop breathing. Then I straighten up and I say, loud, so the terrace and the road and the whole province can hear it. I say, thank you for the offer, and the tax is cancelled. Dare completed, says the box. 280,000 contributors, double payout, and the gold column starts falling before I have finished the sentence. Scarvath does not argue. That is the professional thing about him. He simply inhales, and the sound of it is like a barn door opening in a storm, and I am already running. The breath comes down the ramp and turns 400 steps of stone into a river of light. It goes over the bucket line, over the water channel, over Bess's kitchen, where the 6 copper vats are, and the kitchen is not there anymore. Heat that does not care about walls. My shirt smokes on my back while I am under a stone shelf 9 feet below the ramp, with Vesa on top of me, holding my head down and swearing in a legion dialect. When it stops, the mouth of my pit is glass, smooth, red, head, still moving slightly, with the shape of 2 slag buckets standing in it like flowers pressed in a book. 9 people are dead. Bess is one of them. She was standing in her kitchen arguing with a man about salt. Pell the clerk comes out of the smoke with his hands empty and his sleeves burning, and he is making a sound I have not heard from a demon before. The debt book is gone, 900 pages of every name in this pit, and the only proof any of us was ever alive, cooked to ash in 6 seconds. Grape Soda says nothing. For the first time since my channel opened, nobody in the chat says anything at all. Then Nine Toes says one line. He says, "Tube." The tube is in the second gallery mouth, wrapped in oiled cloth, exactly where Vesa put it. I pull the cloth off and I do what she made me practice 40 times in the dark, and my hands do it without asking me. Shoulder, sight, cap off the back. Behind me is open gallery for 30 feet because a demon engineer read a card 11 times and drew a line in the floor. Scarvath is on the terrace with his neck stretched down the ramp, admiring the glass, because everybody admires their own work, which puts the whole left side of him broadside to me at 90 yards. I squeeze. The noise takes my hearing away for a while. What I see through the smoke is the rocket crossing that 90 yards in less time than it takes to blink, and hitting the red dragon in the shoulder joint of his left wing, and coming apart inside him. Scarvath screams. 260 years of collecting, and I do not think anybody has ever heard that sound out of him. It goes through the pit and up the road, and it goes through his own escort like a whip through wheat. The 3 drakes break formation and go straight up. They do not circle. They do not cover him. They climb until they are dots, and they keep going north, and one of them is screaming too, and in that moment, I learned the single most useful fact of my life. Dragons run. The 100 soldiers of the chamber discover the same thing about themselves. 11 wagons on a narrow road, 100 men in armor, and every one of them turning at once, and Assessor Sarn going past his own mule on foot, with his ledger under his arm. Scarvath does not run. He drags himself off the broken terrace with one wing hanging wrong, and he lands on the slope above the pit mouth, and he starts pulling in air again, and his neck is the only part of him still working properly. Vesa grabs my collar. She says, "He cannot climb with that wing, and he cannot turn quickly on a slope." She says, "If he burns from up there, he burns the glass and nothing else. He has to come down the ramp corridor to reach us, and in the corridor, he can only face one way." I say, "1 rocket left." She says, "I know." She says, "So we make him come down the tube and we make him come down it fast, and there is only one thing in this pit he wants badly enough to do that." We both know what the one thing is, because I am the one thing, and she is not going to say it out loud, so I say it for her. So I walk out onto the glass, alone, in the open, in front of a wounded dragon, with an empty launcher on my shoulder, and the last rocket in a sack on Tam's back 9 feet down in the gallery, and my hands shaking so hard I have to lock my elbows. Viewers, 690,000, and I can feel every one of them the way you feel a crowd in a market, and none of them can hand me anything faster than that dragon can reach me. I stand on the glass and I call him. I say his name. I say, "Scarvath, 260 years and a bucket boy took your wing, and every province you visit is going to hear about it by market day." He comes down the ramp, 60 tons of insulted landlord, one wing dragging, claws breaking the glass into gravel, filling the stone tube exactly the way 30 riders filled it 6 days ago. And he inhales, and the sound of it fills the corridor like water filling a jug. I have learned in the last hour that the inhale is the only warning anybody gets, and also the only opening anybody gets, because you cannot breathe fire and close your mouth at the same time. Tam throws the sack. Vesa loads. I have practiced this 40 times and it takes 4 seconds, and I have about 3, and the extra one comes from the fact that a dragon with a ruined wing cannot brace properly on broken glass. I fire into his open mouth at 11 yards. There is a flat crack, and then his whole head comes apart from the inside, and the fire already climbing his throat has nowhere to go and takes his jaw with it. 60 tons of tax collector goes slack, slides down the last of the ramp, and stops 11 feet from my boots. The heat comes off him for another hour. Nobody in the pit says a word for the first minute of it. Then somebody starts hitting a bucket with a hammer, and then 362 people are hitting anything they can reach, and it goes on until the hammers stop working. The letters have never done what they do next. Channel 3109 has been promoted. Ranked channel, Tier 3. Audience, 911,000. Sponsor eligible. Congratulations. Then the gold column comes down like weather. 9 Toes tips 100,000 coins and says, I have watched this feed for 400 years and I have never once tipped Mark the Day. Auntie Moore tips 200,000 and says she was not asleep after all. Grape Soda tips 50,000 coins and says, Tank Fund, and I look at the little number in the corner and it says 940,000 of 2 million. But the real prize is on the road, and it takes us until dark to understand it. 11 wagons. The Chambers collection train, abandoned by 100 running men, sitting in the ruts where they left it. 900 pounds of refined iron from the province north of us, 400 pounds of copper, 60 barrels of pitch, 11 casks of nails, 2 Cooper's wagons of grain, and a locked chest with the collector's route book in it. Vesa sits down on the wagon tongue with the iron bars across her knees, and she starts laughing, and then she stops laughing, and then she cannot stop shaking, and I finally notice that her hands have been shaking since the first breath. I take my burned shirt off, which is not much of a coat, and I put it around her shoulders. She lets me. She says, 19 years I built engines for the legions, and they never once let me watch the shot land. Then she says, thank you for the press, human, and I say my name is Rook, and she says she knows. The chat goes berserk about that in a way I do not fully follow, and I tell them all to mind their own multiverse. Then I spend 400 coins of pocket-tier money on a set of steel calipers, a tape measure, and 2 mechanical pencils, and I put them in her hands without any ceremony. She looks at the calipers for a long time. Then she goes to the wagon and starts measuring iron bars, and she keeps working until the sun comes up, and every bar gets a number in chalk on the end of it. We bury 9 people in the morning, and Bess gets her name on the smelter wall next to Bost. Then Pell the clerk asks to speak, and this is a demon who kept the book that owned us, standing on a rock in front of 362 freed slaves. He says he remembers 1,100 names. He says he read that book every day for 31 years, and he can rebuild it from memory if somebody will bring him ink and paper and sit with him while he does it. So the Chambers clerk starts writing a new book, In the Pit, from memory, and this one is not a ledger of debts. It is a list of who we are, and Pell puts Bess and Bost at the top of it, because he says the dead should be entered first. Somewhere far away, in a room with no floor, another god is watching all of this on a much bigger screen. The curator does not tip and never has. The curator produces. He owns 11 ranked channels across 400 worlds, and his best one has followed the same demon prince for 6 years and sits at 40 million viewers. His prince is called Malgrave, 9th of the Ashvale line, and Malgrave has never lost anything in his life because his channel is sponsored, and sponsored means the deliveries come from anywhere, not from one small blue world with a hardware store. The curator watches a slave in a burned shirt kill a tax dragon in front of 900,000 strangers, and then he watches his own numbers, which have dipped for the first time in 2 years. He opens a private line to his prince and he says, congratulations, you have competition, and it is a bucket boy. He says, I will fund your hunt personally, and I want it on camera, and I want it slow. And in the pit, the letters make an announcement I do not understand yet. New feature enabled for ranked channels. Rival visibility. You may now see and be seen by other streamers in your region. Then a second window opens next to mine, and in that window there is a demon in white and gold armor on a balcony, looking straight back at me, and under his face the number reads 41 million. The demon in the white and gold armor looks at me through his window for a while before he speaks, and when he does, he sounds delighted, the way a man sounds when a dog does a trick. He says, hello, little channel. I am Malgrave, 9th of the Ashvale line, and you have killed my father's tax collector, which honestly saves me the trouble of doing it myself in about 9 years. Under his face, the number sits at 41 million. Under mine, it says 911,000. He lets both of us look at those two numbers for a moment, because he is not stupid. and numbers are the only insult that lands in this business. Then, he says, my producer has authorized a hunt, 10,000 of the Household Legion, 9 days from now, and I am told the audience prefers a slow one, so I will be bringing cages instead of coffins. I ask him why he is telling me. He smiles like this is the best question anyone has asked him all year, and he says, because announced pain sells better than surprise pain, boy, and because you have 9 days to run and I know you will not, and that is worth 41 million by itself. Then his window shrinks down to a little square in the corner of my letters and stays there, and I understand that from now on we can watch each other work. Vesa asks me what he has that we do not. I ask the letters, and the letters answer in that flat, helpful voice. And the answer takes the last of the good mood out of my morning. Sponsored channels draw deliveries from any world in the network catalog. Unsponsored channels draw from the origin world assigned at channel opening. My origin world is Earth. That is the whole list. One small blue world with a hardware store and no magic in it whatsoever. So Malgrave can be handed a coat that eats fire, and I can be handed a leaf blower. I ask who assigned me Earth, and the letters say, channel opened under a viewer license, license holder anonymous, and then they will not say anything else about it no matter how I ask. Auntie Moore tips 1,000 coins and says, that is enough of that, drink some water. I have started to notice when she changes the subject, and she changes it every time somebody asks who opened my channel. 9 days, 10,000 soldiers, 362 people in a hole in the ground with 2 cannons and a fresh sheet of glass where their front door used to be. Vesa lays it out for me on the wagon tongue with her new calipers holding down the corner of a chalk drawing. She says, we cannot hold the pit. She says, a pit has one mouth, and one mouth is a coffin when the enemy has time. Then she draws the thing above us that I have looked at every day of my life without once thinking of it as mine. The fortress of Ashval. 11 towers, a curtain wall 30 feet high, a cistern, 2 water hammers in the forge, grain for a full year, and 3,000 human servants in the underlevels. Garrison, 240 after what Dolmak lost. She says, we do not need 9 days to break a wall. We need 1 night and a door that is already there. The door is the ore chute. 60 years ago, the keep fed its smelter straight from this pit through a stone throat in the rock, and then the throat cracked in a quake, and they walled it up and started hauling ore around by road instead. The miners know exactly where it is. It is 900 feet of climb at an angle a man can just about work with rope, and it comes out inside the keep, behind the forge, on the wrong side of every wall Ashvale has. So I go shopping, and this is where I learned that pocket tier, the cheapest thing on the menu, is worth more than any dragon. 6 two-way radios and a box of batteries, 5,000 coins. The letters call them handsets. Vesa calls them impossible 3 times, and then she calls them mine, and then she tapes one to Tam because Tam has the best eyes in the province. 1 bolt cutter, 4 headlamps, 300 feet of rope, 11 rolls of a silver sticky cloth, the letters call duct tape, and 2 dozen glass jars with lids. Total, 9,000 coins. Grape Soda says, that is the least cool shopping list in the history of the feed. 9 Toes tips 5,000 coins and says, radios, radios, radios. He bought radios. Do you understand what he just did? Nobody in this world has ever had a voice that travels. Signal fires, horns, runners on horses, that is the entire art of war in Ashval, and I have just bought 6 mouths that can whisper across 9 miles. We go up the chute on the second night, 90 of us. The glass jars go first, packed with Vesa's 3rd batch and a strip of fuse each, because she has decided that a jar of powder is the cheapest cannon anyone ever built. Tam stays at the bottom with a radio and Pell, and his whole job is to say the word ready when the mouth of the chute is clear. He says it 11 times because he is 9 years old, and it is the greatest night of his life. 240 demons hold Ashvale. 239 of them are looking outward at the road, which is the direction from which a sensible attack comes. The forge is warm and empty. We come out from behind the water hammers covered in ore dust. 90 humans, and 11 demons who came off the chain line and chose to stay. And the first thing I do is send 4 smiths to the armory door with the bolt cutter. Then I put a radio in Vessa's hand, and I take the other one, and I say the thing that I will keep saying for the rest of this war. I say, you tell me where and I will tell you when. The armory of a demon fortress is a beautiful thing when you have 362 people with no armor, 900 spears, 200 helmets, mail by the barrel. Dulmak is on the north tower when the alarm finally goes, and he does the correct thing, and correct is not enough. He pulls his garrison off the wall and forms them in the courtyard to sweep the forge yard, 200 armored demons in a square in an open space. Vessa is on the forge roof with both cannons. She has had 4 minutes to lay them, and she has laid them on the courtyard, and she loads gravel over 2 pounds of powder, and she does not fire until the square is dressed and pretty. The first cannon takes the front rank apart, the second takes the second rank, then 90 humans with spears come out of the smoke at a dead run. And the demons of Ashvale learn the thing nobody in this province has ever had to learn, which is what a slave does when he has a spear and a reason. Dulmak comes for me personally. He is very good. He puts a sword through my left forearm before I get the fat gun up, and I fire from the hip, and it takes him off his feet, and then he gets up because he is wearing plate, and buckshot is not magic. He is 4 feet away and lifting the sword when Vessa's second cannon finds him from the roof. She swore afterward that she led him properly. I believe her, because there was nothing left below his knees to argue with. Ashvale falls in 51 minutes. 19 of ours die. I have their names written on my forearm in charcoal before the sun comes up, next to a hole in my arm that Bess would have known how to sew, and now nobody does. Viewers, 1,400,000. Somebody in the chat starts counting the fortress towers out loud in 11 different languages, and the counting goes on for an hour. In the kennels under the north tower, we find Gorm. He is hiding behind a feed bin with his bandaged knee and his whip still on his belt, and when the lamps find him, he starts making the same noise he made on the ramp. 300 people want him dead in about 9 different ways. Grape Soda has a suggestion involving a bucket that I will not repeat, and I stand there with the fat gun in my hand and my whole 11 years right in front of me. Then Tam pushes through the legs of the crowd and takes the whip off Gorm's belt, which nobody thinks to stop, and he throws it into the forge fire. Then he says, in the voice of a 9-year-old who has thought about this a lot, that Gorm should carry buckets. So that is the sentence. Gorm carries slag, and nobody down there needs slag carried anymore, which is the beauty of it. He hauls it up and dumps it and comes back down, 400 steps each way, and Pell writes the count in the book, and every human in Ashvale is welcome to come watch whenever they like. 9 Toes says, that is worse. Auntie Moore says, good. I do not have a clean feeling about it either way, and I still say it out loud, and then we move on because there are 3,000 people in the underlevels who have not eaten since yesterday. 3,011 of them, by Kessen's count. Kitchen staff, weavers, water carriers, stable hands, children, and one old man in the archive with ink on his fingers who has been quietly not dying for 60 years. His name is Kessen. He was bought as a boy to copy chamber documents because human hands are small and human lives are cheap, and in 60 years of copying, he has read every law this province has. He asks me one question before he will help. He asks, when you are done, is this a kingdom with a human on the top of it, or is it something a person can leave and come back to? I say I do not know yet, and he says, good answer, the other one would have been a lie. Then he takes ink and a good sheet, and he writes me a charter in proper chamber form, with all 9 seals and the language they cannot argue with. A free holding, land under common hold, debt collars forbidden, bodies not accepted as payment for anything at any rate. Ever. The chat wants to name it. Of course they do. The vote runs for 2 minutes and there are 11 options and the winner is not close. Grape Soda's entry takes 71%. Kessin writes it into the charter with a completely straight face, because he is a professional, and the free holding of bucket enters the legal record of the demon province of Ashvale. The flag is a slag bucket on a black field. Within 9 hours, somebody in the chat is selling the flag as a banner in 3 other worlds, and Grape Soda claims a cut, and I do not understand the economy of gods, and I have stopped trying. I put the fortress on a schedule, because I have watched my own numbers long enough now to know how this works. The crowd pays for spectacle and walks out on homework, so we do both on purpose. Twice a day, morning and dusk, I go up on the wall and do something worth watching. The rest of the day, the coins buy boring things, and nobody outside this world ever sees them. Vesa keeps the delivery list. She writes it in her own hand, and she prices it in coins, and she has a column for what we can make ourselves within a month, and everything in that column is forbidden to buy. Her rule, not mine. She says every crate we buy is a crate we forget how to build, and the day the crates stop is the day the province finds out what we actually are. We take in 900,000 coins in the first week after the keep. Here is where it goes, and I read the list out on the wall at dusk because the crowd likes knowing what its money did. 200,000 on a machine tool the letters call a metal lathe, plus a second generator and 4 drums of fuel. Vesa cries again, quietly in a corner, and then she does not sleep for 2 days. 140,000 on medicine. Bandages, needles, thread, 11 cases of a powder that stops wounds going green, and a book with pictures in it that Kessin starts translating for the 4 women who have taken over the infirmary. 90,000 on food seed and 11 hand pumps for the cistern. 60,000 on boots, because 3,000 people with no shoes cannot hold a wall, and boots are the least glamorous purchase I have ever made and the one I would make first if we did it again. 40,000 on radios, 9 more handsets, all the batteries the letters will sell me, and a hand-cranked charger that Tam guards like it is his own child. That leaves 370,000 in the bank, and 9 days become 6. At dusk on the 6th day, Vesa and I stand on the north wall with her chalk list between us, and she has 9 things written on it, and she has crossed out 6 of them herself before I ever see it. I say, buy them all, I have the coin. She says no. She says 3. And the other 6 we make in the shop, and then she puts her finger on the first 3, and they are all things that cut metal. Then she says, do you know what I want, human? Not for the wall, for after. And I say, tell me. And she says, a room with a lathe in it and a door that locks from the inside. And I say, done. And she looks at me sideways for a long moment. She says, you should be careful. You agree to things too fast. I say, I have been agreeing to nothing at all for 23 years, and I find I have a lot saved up. She laughs. It is the first time I have heard it, and it is a terrible laugh, loud and flat like a hammer on a plate, and about 900,000 strangers hear it too, and the gold column goes stupid for a full minute. Auntie Moore tips 90,000 coins and says, oh, that one, keep that one. I tell the chat to mind its own multiverse, and the chat tells me, in about 400 languages, to mind mine. Then Tam is on the wall with his radio and his binoculars, and he does not say anything at all. He just hands me the glasses and points down the north road. Dust. Not the dust of 11 wagons, a column of dust that starts at the horizon and does not have an end, and at the head of it a white and gold banner, and behind that the household legion of the Ashvale line coming 3 days early. And in the little window in the corner of my letters, Prince Malgrave is standing on a stone bridge in his beautiful armor with his hands out, and something is coming down out of the sky into them. His producer has sent him a gift, and the letters, because they are fair in the way a scale is fair, tell me exactly what it is. Sponsored delivery, Catalog World 911, 1 ash glass mantle, immune to fire and to shot. Malgrave puts it on. Then he looks straight at me through the window with 41 million people behind his shoulder, and he says, come out from behind your wall, bucket boy, and let us find out what your little crates are worth. The household legion of the Ashvale line takes 4 hours to lay out its camp, and it is the most beautiful thing I have ever hated. 9 blocks of tents in perfect squares, 400 wagons, 9 siege engines still on their carriages, 10,000 soldiers. I count tent rows with Tam's binoculars until the numbers stop meaning anything. Then Vesa takes the glasses off me and counts cook fires instead because she says fires tell you the truth and tents tell you whatever the quartermaster wants you to believe. 2,900 cook fires, she says. Allow 3 men to a fire, plus officers who eat alone. She says, call it 9,200. And they have brought food for 11 days, and every one of those wagons has to sit somewhere I can reach. Mulgrave's herald rides up at dusk and reads terms from a scroll with a gold rod on the end of it. Hand over the human called Rook. Everyone else returns to the collars at a rate of 9 marks a head against the province debt. The keep is forfeit. No executions except the one. 3,011 people are standing on the walls to hear that, and not one of them makes a sound. And then old Kessin, who is 71 years old and has ink on his fingers, laughs like a door hinge and asks the herald whether His Highness has a writ. The herald says, "What?" in the voice of a man who has read this scroll aloud in 9 villages and never once been interrupted. Kessin explains it to him kindly, the way you explain a stare to a drunk. Under chamber law, a chartered freeholding cannot be besieged without a writ of forfeiture sealed by the chamber, and a writ takes 3 readings, and the chamber sits 9 days from now. The herald says the charter is a fiction invented by slaves. Kessin agrees that it certainly was, and points out that it is also filed, sealed, paid for, and copied to 9 district offices, because Pell walked those copies out himself while everyone was busy looking at a dead dragon. The herald rides back. And here is the thing about a legion built out of a noble house. It cannot simply eat a wall in front of 41 million viewers while a human in a slave shirt holds up a piece of paper and asks which law it is breaking. Mulgrave's face in my little window goes through 9 expressions and settles on the last one, which is amusement because he has an audience too. He says, "Fine. 3 days of readings. Enjoy your paperwork, bucket boy." 3 days. I would have paid every coin I own for 3 days, and this idiot with the gold rod has just handed them to me for free. Here is what 362 fighters and 3,011 servants do with 3 days and 370,000 coins. Sandbags first, not sand. Grain sacks packed with pit tailings, 11,000 of them, filled by children and old women in a line that runs from the smelter to the north gate, and stacked 2 deep across every gate arch and every stairhead inside the walls. Vesa's rule about buying is that she will only buy what we cannot make, so we make the bags, and then she puts down 40,000 coins on the one thing nobody in this world can make, and it comes down in coils on a pallet, and it changes the shape of every fight after it. Barbed wire, 40 rolls of it, and the letters call it agricultural fencing, which is the funniest sentence anybody has ever printed in front of my eyes. I do not think anybody who has not been in a demon war understands what happens the first time armored infantry walks into wire in the dark. They do not see it. They step into it and it holds them politely by the leg, and then they lean, and it holds them by the arm as well. We lay it in 3 belts across the whole north approach, staggered, so a man who backs out of the first belt backs into the second. Then we lay a 4th belt nobody can see, in the ditch, under a hand of loose dirt, and Vesa marks the safe lanes with white stones for our own people. 60,000 coins on shovels, picks, wheelbarrows, and 1,100 feet of steel pipe. The pipe becomes cannon barrels on the lathe, banded and turned true, and by the 3rd day we have 9 of them instead of 2, and Vesa names each one after somebody dead. 90,000 on cartridge stock, primers, lead, and powder ingredients, because our own saltpeter beds will not fill 9 barrels for another month, and I am not going to be clever with the powder supply 3 days before 10,000 men arrive. That leaves 180,000 coins in the bank, and the chat has opinions about all of it, and the chat is about to earn its say. Show hours are twice a day now, morning and dusk, and I have learned to work a crowd the way Gorm used to work a line. At dusk on the first day, I go up on the north wall where the Legion women can see me, and I cook noodles. That is the whole performance. Bess taught 11 women to run her vats before she died, and one of them, a girl named Selah, who is 19 and afraid of nothing, has been trying to copy the brick of dried noodles from that first delivery for a month. She has done it with wheat flour and salt water and a rolling pin and pit steam. So on the wall, in front of 9,200 enemy soldiers and 1.5 million gods, I eat a bowl of Ashevale noodles with a bag of chips crumbled on top, slowly, with obvious enjoyment. Grape Soda loses his mind. He says he is eating in front of the siege. This is the greatest disrespect in the history of the feed. Selah's noodles get their own name in 9 languages, and I do not understand a word of any of them, and the gold column runs for 11 straight minutes. 290,000 coins in the bank. Vehicle tier is 100,000, and the letters open a vote because a delivery that big is worth a vote. The options are a truck, an ambulance, or a fire engine. Grape Soda campaigns for the tank fund with the fury of a man who has been ignored for a month. The fund is at 1,200,000, and a tank is 2 million, and so a tank is not on the board, and he knows it. The truck wins with 61%. It comes down in a crate the size of a barn, and lands on the mustering yard and puts a crack in the flagstones, and when we pull the sides off, 3,000 people go absolutely silent. A pickup truck. Gray, dented, with a farm name still painted on the door in a language nobody here can read, and a hand crank window that only works on one side. The letters listed out. Fuel in tank, 1/2. Estimated range, 40 miles. Spare tire, 1. 40 miles. That is the number Vesa writes on the dash in chalk, and she writes under it, "We do not spend a mile on anything that is not a kill." Then, heavy tier. 90,000 coins, and 9 Toes has been quietly telling me what to buy for 4 days, and I have decided to listen to the war, God about war. 1 belt-fed machine gun of Earth manufacture, 2,000 rounds in cloth belts, 1 spare barrel, 1 tripod. The letters describe the rate of fire, and Vesa reads it twice, and asks the letters to say it again. 600 rounds a minute. She sits down on the running board of the truck and says, "That is 900 crossbows in one man's hands, and the crossbows do not have to stop and whine." She spends the rest of that night making a pintle mount for the bed of the truck on the lathe, out of a chamber wagon axle, and she does it by lamplight with her new calipers, and Tam holds the light and falls asleep standing up twice. We do not wait for their 3 readings to finish. On the second night, I take the truck out the sally port with 9 people in the back and the gun mounted and Vesa driving because she worked out the pedals in an afternoon and I am hopeless at it. The Legion camp has lanes. Beautiful straight lanes, laid out by a quartermaster who has never once in his life had to consider a machine that moves faster than a horse and does not tire. We come in from the wagon park side at what Vesa calls a walking trot, and what the letters call 20 miles an hour, which in a dark camp of tents is the speed of a thing from another world. Selah and 2 others are in the bed with jars. The gun opens on the wagon lines, 600 rounds a minute into 400 parked wagons of grain, oil, and fodder, and then the jars go in, and then the oil finds the fodder, and the fodder finds the tents. 900 horses come off their lines all at once. There is no fighting a horse panic in a camp built in squares. The lanes that made the camp beautiful make it a set of channels, and the channels are full of frightened animals and half-dressed soldiers. We are inside their camp for 4 minutes. 11 wagons of grain burn, and then 30, and then the oil wagons go, and I feel the heat on my face from 100 yards off through the back window. 2 of ours die. A man named Foss takes a spear meant for the gun, and a woman named Idra is thrown out of the bed on the turn and does not get up, and I get both names before we are back through the sally port, because I have learned to ask immediately or never. The truck takes a spear through the front, which Vesa says is the radiator, and she patches it with the silver tape and a chewed rag and a paste of pitch, and she says it will hold for maybe 50 miles of the 40 we have. Viewers, 2,100,000. 9 Toes tips 100,000 coins and says one line, and it is the only compliment I have ever wanted. He says, "That was not luck." Malgrave does not wait for the 3rd reading after that. Dawn on the 3rd day, he comes himself. He comes with 200 picked men in a wedge, and he walks in front of them, and he is wearing the ash glass mantle, and he walks straight into our wire, like a man walking through a curtain. The wire holds his men. It does not hold him because the mantle sheds it like water, and that is when I understand what 41 million viewers of sponsored deliveries actually buys. Our first volley from the wall is 9 cannons, and every round Vesa has built, and I watch the shot come off him in white sparks, hits on his chest, on his helmet, on his shoulder, and he does not slow down. Behind me on the wall, people start making the sound I have not heard since the dragon. He is at the gate in 90 seconds. He puts his sword through the sandbags like they are pillows, and he comes into the gate yard and he kills 11 people in about as many breaths, and the 11th is a boy of 16 named Ord, who was holding a spear I gave him. Then he calls up at the wall, perfectly calm, with 41 million people watching. He says, "Bring me the bucket, boy, or I will walk through this fortress room by room, and you may shoot me the whole time." Grape Soda says, "Do something." Auntie Moore says, "Oh no." Nine Toes says nothing at all, which frightens me more than anything else that morning because Nine Toes always has an answer. The letters have an answer. Heavy tier available, 91,000 coins, and I stand there for 4 seconds and I run the whole catalog in my head, and every single thing on it throws metal, and metal does nothing to him. So I do not buy anything at all, and Vesa is going to hear about that decision from 9 million people for the rest of her life. I get on the radio to Vesa in the forge and I say 6 words. I say, the crane, the net, the counterweight. The forge crane is a demon machine, older than the keep, built to lift ore buckets the size of a cart to the water hammers. It swings out over the gate yard because the gate yard used to be where the ore wagons unloaded. It has a hook, a chain, and a counterweight of 11 tons of stone. Vesa has been building cargo nets out of the wire and hemp for 3 days because I told her once that if a thing cannot be shot, it can still be tangled, and she filed that away the way she files everything. I walk out into the gate yard alone. I have the empty launcher on my shoulder because it is the most frightening thing I own, and he cannot know it is empty, and I stop 9 yards from him with the crane hook hanging in the air above us both. He tells me my hands are shaking. They are. He tells me the mantle came from a world where they make things that outlive gods, and my crates come from a world of shopkeepers, and he is right about both. Then I ask him a question, because a crowd is a weapon too, and I have 41 million of his own viewers listening. I ask him, out loud, who chose the mantle. He says my producer, and he says it the way a man says the name of his own hand. I ask him who chose the 10,000. He says, the chamber, on my producer's advice. I ask him who chose to come 3 days early, and there is a pause you could park a wagon in, and then he says, my producer prefers momentum. So I say the thing I have been saving. I say, then you are not the prince of Ashvale. You are the property of a man with a screen, and every one of your 41 million knows it now, and I did not have to buy a single thing to prove it. He comes for me with the sword up, which is exactly 9 yards of straight line under a crane hook. Vesa drops the net from the gantry, and Sella and 11 others haul on the counterweight rope, all together, on the radio call, and the ash glass mantle discovers what it is not immune to. 11 tons of stone goes down, and a demon prince goes up, wrapped in barbed wire and hemp, 40 feet into the air over the gate yard of the fortress of Ashvale, spinning slowly, with his beautiful sword falling out of the net and sticking in the dirt at my feet. I sit down on a sandbag, and I look up at him for a while. 3,000 people come out to look up at him too. Nobody throws anything, because I ask them not to, and because a prince in a net does not need help being a prince in a net. Viewers, 9,400,000. My own numbers pass his channel at 4 minutes past 9 in the morning, and I watch it happen, and the letters mark it with a little chime like a shop bell. The Legion does not attack. 200 picked men stand in the wire and look at their commander hanging over a wall, and nobody in the whole household Legion has an order that covers this. Then the curator opens a line to me. Not to Malgrave. To me. A window with no face in it, only a room with no floor, and a voice that sounds like a man reading a contract in a warm office. He offers to buy the net, Then he offers to buy me sponsorship, catalog access, any world in the network, a real channel, a real budget, and one condition, which is that the story stays a story and the province stays a province. I ask him what happens to the charter. He says, the charter is a prop, and props are fine, and then he says the thing that makes the whole shape of him clear. He says, nobody in 900 worlds wants to watch slaves become citizens. They want to watch a slave become a king. I tell him what he can do with his catalog. Then I make the trade in front of everybody, live, because a deal in front of 9 million witnesses is the only contract this world has ever honored. Mulgrave comes down in exchange for 3 things: the 9 siege engines, every wagon that did not burn, and a written chamber acknowledgement of the Charter of Bucket. Assessor Sarn signs the acknowledgement because he is the highest-ranking chamber officer within 30 miles now, and he signs it with the face of a man eating glass. Then I let the prince walk out through my gate on his own 2 feet with his sword and his mantle. Grape Soda calls me an idiot. Nine Toes says, no, that one comes back, and when he comes back angry at the right person. At the edge of the wire, Mulgrave stops and looks up at the crane, and he is not looking at me at all. He is looking at the little window that only he can see, the one with the room with no floor in it. He says, producer, in a voice with nothing left in it at all, he says, send the other thing, and the voice in the warm office says a name I have never heard, and my letters, which are fair the way a scale is fair, print it for me in cold blue. Sponsored intervention approved. Contract streamer inbound. Channel handle. Vosk. The letters give me a page on Vosk because the network is proud of him and pride is free advertising. Channel handle Vosk. 19 million viewers. Homeworld unlisted. Format. Contract work. Confirmed streamer kills. 41. 41. Not soldiers, not monsters. Streamers. 41 people who had their own blue letters and their own crowd, and a hunter who gets paid by producers to end feeds and keeps the numbers of the dead on his own page like a butcher's board. Kessin asks me what troubles me most, and I tell him the truth, which is the catalog. Vosk draws from 9 worlds. I draw from a world of shopkeepers. He can be handed a cloak that eats sound, and I can be handed a leaf blower. Kessin writes that down. Kessin writes everything down, which is a habit that saves my life about 4 hours later, and neither of us knows it yet. Vosk arrives at the crossroads 9 miles north at noon, and he does not hide it, because his format is announced work. His crowd wants a hunt, so he gives them a hunt, and the first thing a hunt needs is a scent. He kills our northern scout post to get it. 4 people, a smith named Merrick who came off the chain line the first day and had taken to sleeping with his hammer, and 3 others whose names go on the smelter wall that evening. He does it with a bow that goes through mail like mail is paper, and he does it from 400 yards, and he does it in front of 19 million people who tip him for the grouping. Then he sends me a line across channels, and his voice is friendly and bored like a man ordering food. He says, I have watched your feed. He says, you are clever with junk. He says, junk is what people use when they have nothing, and tonight you will find out you have nothing. Vesa and I sit in the forge with Tam and Sela and Pell and Kessin, and we do the arithmetic on a man who cannot be seen or heard. His cloak eats sound and light. He has a beast on a lead that the letters describe as a tracker that hunts by heartbeat. He has a ring, listed openly on his page like a badge, that stops the first death he takes each day. Vesa says the beast is the real problem. She says, a wall keeps out an army, and a thing that walks to your heartbeat walks past every wall you own. Sela says, then we give the province 100 heartbeats, and everybody looks at her, and this is why I keep her in every meeting from then on. We empty the servant levels. 3,011 people go down the ore chute to the pit with lamps and food and Bess's vats, and the pit that used to be the worst place in my world is now the safest one, and Gorm carries the water for them because that is his job now. Then we put out heartbeats. 11 goats in the North Tower, 9 dogs in the granary, 60 fighters spread thin through the underlevels with radios, told to breathe and wait. And me in the forge, alone, because a hunter paid by a producer comes for the face on the channel and nothing else. Then I go shopping and I want it on the record that this is the stupidest list of my life and that I made it on purpose. Pocket tier, 900 coins, 1 leaf blower, the electric kind, with a cord, 10 pounds of white wheat flour, 1 can of spray paint, 1 air horn, 4 road flares, 1 bag of jingle bells, which the letters describe as a seasonal ornament. Grape Soda says, "What is he doing?" Nine Toes says, "Oh." Nine Toes tips 50,000 coins and says, "Oh, that is very good." And then he goes quiet, and 19 million people from another channel start drifting over to see what a war god just approved. We string the bells across every doorway in the keep at ankle height. Then we run the cord from the generator, through the forge, and up the main stair, and I sit on an anvil in the dark with a leaf blower in my lap and 10 pounds of flour in a grain sack next to my boot. Vesa refuses to leave. We argue about it for a minute and a half, and I lose, and she takes the fat gun and puts herself in the smelter doorway where she can see the stair, and that is the whole plan. At the 3rd hour of the night, the bells on the kitchen door ring once, softly, and then nothing rings anywhere for a very long time. At the 4th hour, something kills 2 of the dogs in the granary without a sound. Radio calls come in, and I answer each one with 1 word, so nobody has to guess whether I am still breathing. At the 5th hour, I hear the beast on the main stair. It does not click on stone, it breathes, and the breathing comes up the stairwell in a way that makes my skin move. I hit the trigger on the leaf blower, and I pour the flour into the intake, and 10 pounds of white dust goes up that stairwell in a cloud that fills the whole forge hall. The beast turns white. So does the man behind it, from his boots to the top of his hood, like a baker walking out of an accident. There is no cloak in any catalog in any world that stops flour. He is a shape, 6 feet of gray, outlined in white, standing on my stair, and I can see the exact spot where his chest is. And for 1 whole second, the hunter and I look at each other with equal surprise. He shoots first. He is faster than me and better than me, and the arrow goes through my left shoulder and out the back and pins my shirt to a support post. Vesa fires from the smelter door and hits the beast and blows most of its head off, and then he shoots her too, and she goes down on 1 knee in the doorway with an arrow through her upper arm, and she does not make a sound. That is when I stop being frightened. I would like to say something noble about it. What actually happens is that I get very calm, the way you get calm when your arithmetic finishes. I tear my shirt off the post and I put 4 rounds into the white shape from 11 feet away with the pistol in my right hand, and he takes all 4 and falls down my stairs. Then his ring goes off. It burns off his finger with a sound like a kettle, and he stands up in a white cloud with 4 holes in him, healed, and he laughs. And he tells me that was 1, and that everybody gets 1. He walks up my stair to finish it, and I lift my radio instead of my gun, and I say to my crowd, out loud, so all of them and all of his hear it, that I need 100,000 coins in 9 seconds, and I need the vote to land on the ambulance. Because a delivery arrives at the position of the streamer who bought it. That is the rule. It has always been the rule. It came down that way in the pit, and it came down that way on the mustering yard, and it cracked the flagstones both times. And a hunter standing 4 feet in front of me is standing at my position, which is a thing the carriage terms never once considered. The chat pays in 4 seconds. Not 9, 4. 2.5 million people who had been waiting for a month to see what the letters would do if somebody read them properly. Vehicle tier delivery incoming, say the letters, in the same cheerful voice they used for a bag of chips in a slag pit. Stand clear. I go flat on the forge floor next to Vesa, and I put my good arm over her head, and 1 ambulance of ordinary earth manufacture comes through the roof of the fortress of Ashvale at whatever speed a crate does that, and it lands on Vosk. The forge hall is 9 feet deep in white dust, and there is a wheel spinning slowly on top of a pile of stone where my stair used to be, and somewhere under all of it is a hunter with 41 streamer kills on his page and no rings left. His channel goes dark. The letters print it flatly. Channel Vosk has ended. 19 million viewers released. About 11 million of them come straight to me, and my number goes over 20 million while I am lying on the floor of my own forge, bleeding in the flour, holding on to an engineer with an arrow in her arm. Then the ambulance doors fall open, and the inside of it is full of exactly the things we need, which is the single luckiest thing that has ever happened to me. Bandages, splints, a cabinet of medicine with pictures on the labels, 2 oxygen bottles, a stretcher on wheels. Sella and the infirmary women get to Vesa first, and they will not let me near her until they have cut her sleeve away and packed the wound, and then they hand me the needle, because Vesa says from the floor, through her teeth, that the human is doing it, or nobody is. So I stitch her arm with the picture book open on the bench and my hands shaking, and she talks me through it in a completely level voice, telling me where to put each one, criticizing my spacing, calling me a poor apprentice. 9 stitches. She counts them out loud so I do not have to. Then she puts her good hand flat on the back of my neck for a moment and says, "Thank you, Rook." And it is the second time she has used my name, and I notice both. Somebody in the chat tips 100,000 coins with a note that says marry her, and somebody else tips 200,000 with a note that says marry him, and Auntie Moore tips 300,000 and says, both of you go to sleep. We do not go to sleep, and 11 minutes later, nobody in this fortress is going to sleep for 3 days, because the letters change color. They have been blue since the first morning in the pit. Now the whole frame goes amber, and a new window opens that has never opened before, and it has a seal on it that even Kessin does not recognize. Standards and Ratings Board. Formal complaint received, case number withheld. Complainant, a licensed producer. The complaint reads that Channel 3109 has used the delivery apparatus as a kinetic weapon in violation of the carriage terms, and that such use endangers the integrity of the network. Finding, upheld. Penalty, suspension of all delivery service for 72 hours. Appeal window, none. Have a pleasant broadcast. I read it 4 times. Vesa reads it over my shoulder with her arm in a sling. Kessin reads it and then asks the only question that matters, which is who the complainant is, and the letters will not say, and none of us needs them to. 72 hours, 3 days with no crates, 3 days where the only weapons in this fortress are the ones we built with our own hands out of pipe and pit iron and one very good machine tool. And in the little window in the corner, Prince Mulgrave, in his ash-glass mantle, on his balcony, holding a cup of something warm, raises it to me. Behind him on the road, coming down from the capital with the chamber's own banner, and no writ and no readings, and no polite herald, 30,000 soldiers of the grand host of the Ashvale line are already 9 hours into their march. Kessin does the arithmetic on the road, and the arithmetic is not friendly. 30,000 soldiers marching from the capital cover 19 miles a day with wagons, and the capital is 41 miles out, so they arrive in the evening of the second day. The suspension runs 72 hours. That means the grand host of the Ashvale line hits my wall about 9 hours before my crates come back. Nobody in the room says the word coincidence. Pell says the timing is elegant, in the flat voice of a clerk who has watched elegant things be done to people for 31 years. So we stop looking at the sky and we look at the shop. And I am going to tell this part properly, with the numbers, because everything that happens after it happens because of what 4,000 people did in 2 days without a single delivery. Vesa runs the shop. Her arm is in a sling and she directs with her chin and her voice, and she has learned in 1 month to stop asking people to do things and start telling them. The lathe runs day and night in shifts of 4 hours because the men on it start making mistakes after 4 hours, and a mistake on a barrel is a dead crew. 2 more cannons a day. By the second evening, we have 16. The powder mill is Sella's. She has 11 crews of 9 women each, and a rule that no crew mixes near another crew, and she has moved the whole operation into the old sulfur gallery, where a spark has stone above it and stone below it. 200 pounds of powder on the first day, 340 on the second, once she works out that the pit steam can dry the cake faster than the sun ever did. Cartridge work is done by the children and the old people because it is fine work and it wants small, careful hands. 400 an hour at first. By the second morning, with Pell timing the line and moving 2 people between stations, 900 an hour. 900 an hour. Vesa stands behind that line for a while, and then she comes and finds me on the wall and says, "Human, do you understand what we have?" She says, "The crates gave us nothing this week, and we made 11,000 rounds." The 9 captured siege engines get rebuilt in a day and a half. Vesa strips off the throwing arms and rebuilds the buckets to hold Sela's jars. 40 pounds of powder in a clay pot with a fuse and a bag of pit gravel packed around it. She calls them pots. The chat calls them something else that I will not repeat, and the name that sticks with the crews is Pots, because Sela likes it, and Sela is now more frightening than I am. The truck has 22 miles of fuel left, and I write that number on the dash under her old chalk line, and I make everybody in the fortress read it, because 22 miles is a resource, and a resource that everyone knows about does not get wasted. 911 rounds left for the machine gun, and no way to make more, because a belt-fed weapon eats a kind of cartridge we cannot yet build. Vesa says give her 3 months. I say I will give her 3 months if we have 3 months. And through every hour of it, the chat cannot send me so much as a nail, and I keep looking up out of habit like a man checking a sky that owes him rain. 22 million people are watching a fortress get ready to die, and the amber frame in the corner of my letters says delivery service suspended, 71 hours remaining, and every one of those millions has coin and no door to push it through. So they do something else, and this is the part of my life I still cannot properly explain. Nine Toes writes one line on the second morning. He says the board suspended deliveries, it did not suspend talking. Then he starts teaching. He has been a war god for longer than my world has had a name, and he takes my chat and he turns it into a staff college with 22 million students and 1 pupil who matters. He says your wire is laid for infantry, and the marshal coming at you is Ith of the Grand Host, and Ith does not send infantry into wire. She sends sappers with fascines at night to fill your ditch in 9 places at once, and she puts mantlets in front of them. He says, so put your pots on the ditch, not on the field. Mark the 9 places she will choose. She will choose them by ground slope, and here is how you read ground slope by moonlight. And then the rest of the crowd joins in, because in a crowd of 22 million from 400 worlds, a great many have carried a spear for somebody. Somebody dead for 900 years explains how to keep a night watch awake. Somebody else explains how to catch a tunnel by sinking a barrel of water in the cellar and watching for ripples. Warhorse, who has never once said a useful word to me, writes 4 solid paragraphs about horse panic and the smell of pitch. Sleepy Axe, who I had written off as a joke, once commanded a wall in a war between 2 moons, and he gives me the line that saves the North Tower. He says, the reserve never sits behind the gate. It sits in the middle where it can reach 2 walls, and it does not fight until the 2nd hour. I write all of it on the forge wall in chalk. Kesson copies it onto paper in his neat clerk's hand and titles it the Wall Book. And by the 2nd evening there are 11 copies of the Wall Book and 1 in the hand of every crew leader in Ashvale. Grand Marshal Ith arrives at dusk on the 2nd day and does not send a herald with a gold rod. She sends 1 rider with 1 line, and the line is, terms are open until the moon is up. After that, the terms are the ground. I ride out to meet her on a mule with Kesson and a white cloth, because Nine Toes says you always look at the person who is going to try to kill you. She is about 11 feet of gray demon in plain armor that has been repaired more than once, and she is older than Scarvath was and much more dangerous, because she does not enjoy any of it. She says, I have read your charter. She says it is good law and it will not save you. She says, my host is 30,000, and my orders are from the chamber and the prince, and I will spend 4,000 of my own to take this wall if I have to. Then she looks at me for a while and asks the only question she actually wrote out for. She asks, is the boy dead who used to carry buckets, or are you still him? I tell her the truth. I say I am still him, and there are 3,011 people behind that wall who have carried buckets, and every one of them knows what your chamber pays for a body. She says 9 marks. She says it before I do, and she says it with something in her face that is not quite disgust and not quite shame. Then she puts her helmet on and rides back, and the terms become the ground. They come at the ditch in 9 places at night with fascines behind mantlets. 9 toes called it 8 hours before it happened, and the pots are already laid on those 9 places, and the crews have the ranges chalked on their own carriages, and every crew leader has a page of the wall book folded in his shirt. Sela fires the first pot herself, and 40 pounds of powder in a clay pot lands in a ditch full of demons carrying bundles of sticks. Then the other 8, and then reloads, and the ditch stops being a place where anything can be filled. Ith adapts inside 20 minutes, which is why she is a marshal. She pulls the sappers, brings her heavy foot forward under a shield roof, and starts eating our wire with axes on a 200-yard front, taking the losses on purpose, buying ground with bodies at a fixed rate. 400 of her men die in the wire in the first hour, and she keeps buying, and I stand on my own wall and understand that this is what an army is for. At the second hour, she is on the wall in 3 places, and the north tower falls, and this is where the reserve does what Sleepy Axe told me. It fights in the yard, in a mass, with spears and mail, and 1 man on a machine gun in the bed of a truck parked in the gate arch. 911 rounds. 260 of them go into the North Stair in 11 seconds, and the North Stair does not admit anybody else that night. Tam is on the wall with a radio when the tower comes down, because he refuses to be anywhere else. And a stone the size of a bread loaf breaks his left arm in 2 places. He finishes his call with his right hand before he lets anybody carry him, and Pell writes that down in the new book, by name. At the 4th hour, Eth tries the tunnel, and the barrel of water in the cellar floor ripples, exactly the way a stranger from a dead world said it would, and Sela is waiting in that cellar with 2 pots and no ventilation. At the 6th hour, the grand host stops coming, not broken, not routed, stopped in order at the whistle, in the way only a professional army stops, and they carry their wounded back with them, and they leave 4,100 in my ditch and my wire and my yard. We have 211 dead. I stand on the broken north wall in the morning and read every one of those names out loud, and it takes 40 minutes. The chat does not write a single word during any of it, and Kessin says afterward that silence is the loudest thing a crowd can do. Grand Marshal Ith sends me a private line at noon. She says 3 things and then she closes it. She says, "My losses are 4,120 and yours are 211, and if I take this wall, I take it with nothing left to hold the province." She says, "I have been a soldier for 900 years and I have never before been beaten by a workshop." Then she says, "When the chamber asks me to do this again, I am going to ask them for the writ, and I am going to ask them very slowly." And at 11 minutes past noon, 72 hours after it started, the amber frame in the corner of my letters goes blue again. Delivery service restored. Thank you for your patience. 22 million people who have been sitting on their hands for 3 days start pushing coin at me all at once. 11 million coins in the first hour. The letters call it the largest single hour in the history of the network, and Grape Soda claims credit for all of it. Here is what I buy with the first 200,000. Shovels, stretchers, 900 pounds of lime for the burials, splints, plaster, and a book about setting a child's arm. 400 blankets. So Grape Soda says, "Buy a weapon, coward." Auntie Moore tips 500,000 coins and says, "No, he is doing it right." And then she says something strange that I turn over for weeks afterward. She says, "This is the part your world never gets to keep." Then the letters do something new. Channel 3109 has been promoted. Ranked channel, Tier 1, audience, 26 million. You are now the most watched feed in this region. And directly under it, in amber, the second notice. Standards and Ratings Board. Further complaint received from the same licensed producer. Grounds, incitement of network personnel to provide tactical assistance. Kessin reads that one and starts laughing so hard he has to sit down on a fallen block. Then he takes out his own papers, the ones he has been writing since the night with the flower, and he lays them out on the stone for me. He says they have a process. He says every network in every world that has ever existed has a process, and nobody in 900 worlds has ever once used this one, because nobody ever thought a mortal would read the terms. He says appeal with standing with a named complainant, heard in front of the whole audience. He says, "I have written it. It needs your mark, and one thing I cannot get." I ask what thing. He says, "The appeal must be filed by a license holder." and the only license holder attached to this channel is whoever opened it, and that name is sealed, and Auntie Moore has changed the subject 9 times. In the corner of my letters, Malgrave's window opens again, and he is not on his balcony this time. He is standing on a stone platform under an open sky with 9 chains hanging from posts around him, and something enormous asleep in the dark behind him. He says, "My father's host has failed, and my producer tells me I have 1 asset left." Then he lifts a horn to his mouth, the kind of horn Vesa says the old line used before there were laws, and he blows it. The thing behind him wakes up, and 9 drakes come off the cliffs above the Black Spire and start circling, and Malgrave looks at me and says, "You have 3 days of noodles left, bucket boy. Then I burn every field between here and the sea." I turn the window off. Then I go find Vesa in the shop, where she is measuring a barrel with her good hand, and I say the sentence I have been holding since the morning I bowed to a dragon. I say, "We are done waiting behind a wall. We are going to his castle, and I want the whole multiverse to watch us walk up to his front door." We march on the 4th morning with 1,100 fighters, 16 cannons on chamber wagons, 9 pot throwers, 400 pots, 1 truck with 22 miles in the tank, and every radio we own. 3,000 people stay behind in Ashvale under Selah, who does not want to stay and stays anyway because she is the only person alive who can run the powder mill. She makes me repeat the word powder back to her twice before she lets the column go. Kessin rides in a wagon with the charter, 11 copies of it, and a writing box. Pell rides with the new book. Tam rides on the truck with his arm strapped to his chest and his radio in his good hand. The truck itself goes behind 4 oxen the whole way, because 22 miles of fuel is worth more than any wagon in the column, and Vesa will not let anybody turn the key. Gorm walks behind the water cart, because that is his work now, and nobody has bothered to tell him to stop. 41 miles to the Black Spire. We do it in 4 days, and we do it slowly on purpose, because a column that arrives fast arrives alone. The first pit is 9 miles up the road, Leavenhold. 211 humans, 1 overseer, 4 guards, and a stone throat exactly like the one I spent 11 years in. We do not fight for it. I stand at the top of the ramp and I say the same sentence I said to Gorm, and then Kessin reads the charter out loud with his clerk's voice, and the overseer looks at 16 cannons and 1 truck and puts his whip on the ground. 211 people come out of Leavenhold. 19 of them come with us, and the rest go to Ashvale, because there is a wall there and a mill and a woman named Selah who needs hands. The second pit surrenders before we get there, because word travels faster than a column. The overseer of Coran Deep meets us at the 3rd milestone with his own collar keys in a sack. He also wants a copy of the charter. He would like to keep his mine open under the new terms, and he would like his name spelled correctly. Kessin spells it correctly. Then he charges him 9 marks for the copy, which is the funniest thing the chat has seen all week. The third pit is a fight. The overseer there hangs 11 of his own workers off the head frame before we arrive to prove nobody is coming to save them, and the fight lasts 19 minutes, and I keep my promise about the smelter wall in front of 400 witnesses. By the 4th day, the column is 1,900 people, and I have stopped being able to know every face. Pell writes them all down anyway. He says a name in a book is a fact, and facts are the only thing the chamber has ever been afraid of. Grand Marshal Ith rides alongside us on the 2nd day, 4,000 of her host on the ridgeline, out of range, in order, keeping pace. She sends me 1 line every few hours, and each one is a small masterpiece of doing nothing. She has requested the writ. She has requested clarification of the writ. Now she has requested that the chamber confirm whether the acknowledgement signed by Assessor Sarn is a chamber instrument. It is, because Sarn signed it, and Sarn is technically my clerk. Her last message before she peels off says, "The road ahead is not mine." Then she tells me the thing she rode 2 days to tell me, which is what the Black Spire actually is. A spire of black rock 900 feet above the valley, 1 bridge in, 40 feet wide, 2 gates on it, 600 household guards, all of them the prince's own, and a roost on the top where the old worm sleeps, who is Scarvath's mother, and who is not fat and not slow. It says, "I have looked at that rock for 900 years, and I have never once been able to draw a way up it. Then she rides away with 4,000 men and takes them nowhere in particular very slowly. Malgrave has been burning fields for 4 days. He does it in the evenings in show hours with 9 drakes flying in a line, and his 41 million people watch grain go up while my 26 million watch me walk. Then, on the 4th afternoon, he stops burning fields and comes for the column, which is the first thing that man has ever done that I respect. 9 drakes, 20 feet each, out of the sun on the western side, and the first pass takes 11 people off the wagons before anybody can shout. Fire in a column is worse than fire in a fortress. Nothing is bolted down, and everything is a road. But we have been ready for this since a red dragon glassed my front door, and Vesa has spent a month building the answer with her calipers. 4 of the 16 cannons ride on carriages she designed with a pin that lets the barrel go up to 60 degrees instead of 9. Their loads are pit gravel over 2 pounds of powder, and their crews have practiced on kites for 11 days. The drakes come in low on the second pass, because the first pass was free and nothing on the ground had answered them. 4 high-angle guns fire on the whistle, and a wall of gravel goes up in front of a drake doing 60 miles an hour, and the drake flies into it, and everything about that animal that was working stops working. It comes down on the road ahead of the truck and slides 200 feet. Then the other 3 guns find a second one on the turn, and it goes into a field with 1 wing folded. 7 drakes go up and stay up. They will not come below 300 feet after that, and above 300 feet a drake can burn a field but cannot pick a man off a wagon, and that is the whole difference. Viewers, 31 million. 9 Toes says, air defense, first in this world's history, mark the day, and Kesson does mark it in the book with the date and the range and the names of the 4 crews. That night we camp 9 miles out, and I sit with Vesa on the tailgate of the truck, and we look at the black rock on the horizon with a fire on top of it. She says it plainly. She says, I cannot take that bridge. She says 16 cannons will break the first gate, and 600 household guards will hold the second gate all day, and 40 feet of bridge is a place where numbers do not help. I ask her what would help. She says, being on top of it. She says, everything about that rock assumes nothing arrives from above except the worm. So I ask the letters what flies, and I ask it out loud, on the wall of a burned grain field, in front of 26 million people. The letters are very calm about it. Vehicle tier, 100,000 coins, and a list. 1 light aeroplane requires a runway of 900 feet. 1 glider requires a tow. 1 hot air balloon goes wherever the wind goes. And 1 retired police helicopter of ordinary Earth manufacture, sold at auction, with 40 minutes of fuel in the tanks. I read the last one out loud twice. Then the chat detonates in a way that it has not since the dragon, and the word helicopter goes through 26 million people in 900 languages, and Grape Soda writes 1 line that I will have carved over a door someday. He says, forget the tank, and 11,000 people who have been funding that tank for a month agree with him inside of a second. Then Auntie Moore does the thing she has been doing since the first 100 coins in the slag pit, and she does it bigger. Auntie Moore has tipped 1,100,000 coins. Auntie Moore says, buy the loud one, and buy fuel, and wear something warm. 1,100,000. My whole channel earned 11 million in its best hour, and this woman hands over 1/10 of it in 1 line without being asked. And when I try to thank her, she says she is going to make tea. I buy the helicopter. Then I spend 40,000 coins on 11 drums of fuel, because Vesa reads the fine print now before I am allowed to buy anything, and 40 minutes of flying is a stunt and never a plan. It comes down in a field of burned grain at dusk, white and blue, with a light bar on the nose and a number painted on the tail that Vesa immediately covers with chalk, because numbers on things confuse the crews. 1,900 people stand in a circle around it, and nobody goes near it for a full minute. Then Tam walks up with his broken arm and touches the skid, and after that, everybody touches it, and Pell writes down that they did. Then comes the problem that no amount of coin solves, which is that nobody on this entire planet has ever flown anything. The letters sell me a manual for 400 coins. It is 900 pages long, and Kessin starts translating page 1 while I sit in the seat and put my hands on things that do nothing. And then a name I have not thought about since my first morning writes into the chat, and it is the smallest name in my whole crowd. Little Fen, who tipped 2 coins on the day I killed a hound and apologized for being poor, says, I can teach him. Little Fen says, I flew rotorcraft for 200 years, for a world that does not exist anymore, and I have watched this feed since the first hour, and I have never once had anything to give. 9 Toes, who has not been wrong once in a month, says one word to 26 million people. He says, listen. So I listen. For 9 hours, on the ground, with the engine off, Little Fen walks me through it in the chat, while Kessin reads the manual out loud beside me, and Vesa takes the panel apart to see what is behind each switch. Collective in the left hand, cyclic in the right, pedals for the tail. Little Fen says the same thing 11 times in 9 hours, and it is the only piece of advice that keeps me alive later. He says, do not chase it. Move small and wait. We burn 2 drums of fuel on the practice. I get it 3 feet off the ground and it tries to go sideways into a wagon. I get it 9 feet up and put it back down so hard the skid bends. Vesa straightens the skid with a hammer and a length of pipe and says nothing at all, which is her loudest voice. On the 11th attempt, I hold a hover for 40 seconds and 1,900 people cheer like we have already won something, and the chat gives me 2 million coins in an hour for what is honestly the worst flying in the history of 2 worlds. Grape Soda says, this is the funniest thing that has ever happened on this network. He is not wrong. I fall out of the sky 4 times in an afternoon in front of 31 million people, and every crash pays for the fuel of the next one. By dark, I can take off, turn, hold a hover, and land without breaking anything. That is all I have. Little Fen says that is enough for 1 trip and no more, and then he says, do not make more than 1 trip. We plan it on the tailgate with chalk. 16 cannons and 1,900 people go at the bridge at dawn and make the loudest, ugliest, most convincing attack anybody in this province has ever seen, and they do not have to win. They have to be watched. Then I go over the top with 4 people, 4 bags of pots, 1 new launcher, and 4 rockets bought at heavy tier with anti-Moore's coin, and we come down on the roost above 600 guards who are all facing the wrong way. Vesa insists on being one of the 4. I say her arm is 9 days out of an arrow. She says, and yet you would like somebody on that roof who can set a fuse, and I have no argument at all, so I stop pretending to have one. We are sitting on the tailgate at the end of it, with the plan chalked between us and everybody else asleep. And she says, if this works, I want my room with the lock, and if it does not work, I want you to know I would have signed for the collar again to be here. I tell her the truth. I say, when this is over, I am going to be a man with a workshop and nothing else. And she says, good. That is the only offer in this whole province worth having. Then she goes to check the fuses one more time because she is who she is, and I sit on the tailgate of a farm truck from another world and look up at a black rock with a dragon asleep on it. At the first gray light, 1,900 people start walking toward the bridge. 16 cannons open on the outer gate of the black spire at first light, and 1,900 people start shouting at a wall, and none of it is meant to work. Kessin is out in front in a wagon with a white cloth and 11 copies of the charter, reading chamber law at 600 household guards through a speaking trumpet, which is the single bravest thing I have watched anyone do. Pell stands beside him with the new book and reads names. Not laws. Names. 2,400 humans and demons who came out of the pits of this province in a month, read out slowly at a stone gate, while cannons knock the facing off it. The guards on that gate have families in the villages we walked through. 9 of them come off the wall in the first hour and just walk away down the road, and Pell writes their names down as they pass and tells them they are entered. At the second hour, the truck goes up the bridge with the gun in the bed, empties 200 rounds into the gate arch, and comes back with 11 arrows in it. That is the last of the fuel. The truck dies at the bridge foot and becomes a barricade, and Vesa does not even flinch. At the third hour, with everybody in that fortress standing on the bridge side, I start the engine. 4 of us go up, me in the left seat because Little Fen says the left seat is where a beginner belongs, Vesa in the right with her arm out of the sling and 4 fuses in her teeth. In the back, Harn, a smith out of Leavenhold, and Bell, 19 and the best climber in the column, sitting on the bags of pots with the launcher and 4 rockets. Tam holds the radio on the ground and his whole job is to say 2 words, high and low, and he has been practicing them for a day and a half. The rock is 900 feet of black stone, and the wind comes off it in a way that Little Fen calls rotor downwash, and I call a personal insult. The machine tries to roll left. I do the thing he told me 11 times, move small and wait. We come up the west face out of sight of the bridge at the speed of a walking man, 200 feet, 400. My hands are wet and the whole world is noise. At 600 feet the drakes see us, and I find out what my hands do when there is nowhere at all to hide. 2 of them come off the upper cliffs together, 20 feet each, and I know exactly what they are going to do because I watch them do it to my column. Low pass first. Free. Little Fen says 1 word in the chat. He says, nose, which means point the machine at them because a helicopter is not a bird and does not have to turn the way they expect. Bell gets the door open. I put the nose on the leading drake and Vesa hands the launcher back over my shoulder, loaded, and Harn braces himself in the door with it on his shoulder and 1 boot on the skid. I have never fired that thing from the air and neither has he. It does not matter. At 40 yards, a rocket does not need to be clever. It takes the lead drake in the chest and comes apart inside it, and the animal folds up and goes down the west face, turning over and over, and it is still falling when the second drake breaks. And then every winged thing on that rock decides at once that it has business elsewhere. The second drake goes straight up. 2 more come off the roost and go north without ever coming near us. 5 that I never even see leave the spire and are over the ridge in 9 seconds. So I sit there in a police helicopter from a world of shopkeepers 900 feet over a demon prince's castle and watch the sky empty itself. 9 drakes, 1 tube. Not one of them will come within 400 yards of us again. Viewers, 44 million. The chat is one solid wall of gold, and Grape Soda writes in enormous letters that he wants it on the record that he asked for a tank, and this is better. I put the machine down on the roost, and I put it down badly. The left skid takes a rock and folds, and we come to rest tilted with the rotor still turning, and Vesa is out before it stops. The roost is a bowl of black stone the size of a market square, and it stinks. And in the middle of it, chained, is the largest living thing I will ever see. 9 chains. Each link as thick as my thigh, each chain running to an iron post sunk into the rock, and at the end of them a red worm with a gray muzzle and 1 eye clouded over, lying on her side, breathing like a bellows in a shut room. She opens the good eye and looks at 4 humans standing in the wind with a broken helicopter, and she says, in a voice like a mountain moving in its sleep, that we are either very brave or very stupid. And either way, we should have brought more rockets. Vesa knows what she is looking at. Vesa says that is Osira, and Osira laid the egg that became Scarvath, and Vesa says it with her hand flat on my chest, holding me back, the way you hold somebody back from a fire. I ask her the question that anybody who has worn a collar asks first. I ask, how long? 260 years. The old prince took her when her wing was broken, sank 9 posts into her roost, and put a horn in his son's hand. Every month for 260 years a horn sounded, and Scarvath went out to collect the iron of a province, because if he refused, they would put a chisel in his mother's good eye. 260 years of iron tax off 9 provinces, and every pound of it was ransom money for a dragon with a broken wing. I sit down on a rock in front of a chained dragon, and I put my face in my hands for a moment, because I killed her son, and I did it well, and I would do it again, and none of that fits anywhere comfortable. I tell her, out loud in front of 44 million people. I say, I killed Scarvath at the mouth of a slag pit with a rocket in his throat, and he was collecting for you, and he never told me, and I would not have listened if he had. Osira is quiet for a while. Then she says, he was fat and slow, and he had 260 years of practice at being a thing he hated, and if the horn had sounded tomorrow, he would have gone again. Then she says, cut the chains, human, and I will be very careful about which of you I eat. The chains are chamber iron, and a bolt cutter will not touch them. What breaks is the posts. Vesa reads the rock, taps 3 of the 9 posts with a hammer, says the stone is faulted at these, and Harn puts a rocket into the base of the largest anchor while everybody lies flat. 2 rockets, that is what it costs. 2 of my 4 spent on the anchors, and Belle and Harn haul the loosened chains off her shoulders with a chain hoist meant for feeding her, and Asira stands up for the first time in my grandmother's lifetime. She goes up. She does not thank me, and I do not want her to. 900 feet of dragon comes off that roost, and the whole spire shakes, and every guard on that bridge turns and looks up, and that is the moment we take the stairs. Down is easy when the whole garrison is looking at the sky. Pots down, 2 stairwells, doors wedged, radios calling floors. Bell goes ahead of us like a spider. Harn breaks a lock with a hammer that he has been carrying since Leavenhold. I get on the radio and I say, "Low," and Tam says it back. And 1,900 people at the bridge stop shouting and start pushing, because low means the second gate is about to open from behind. We open the second gate at the 9th minute. 600 household guards find out that the enemy is inside the winch room, and then the bridge fills up with everybody I brought, and the Black Spire stops being a castle and becomes a building with a fight in it. It takes 2 hours. 81 of ours die in those stairs. I will not pretend I know what happened in most of that fortress, because I was in one stairwell of it with a shotgun and a radio, and everything I know about the rest came later out of Pell's book. Malgrave finds me on the roost. Of course he does. I go back up because Little Fen is telling me in the chat that a broken skid does not mean a broken machine, and that the fuel is still worth something, and I am standing next to it when he comes up the roost stair alone. He is beautiful, and he is calm, and the ash glass mantle has not a mark on it. He says, "I have been thinking for a month about how this ends." He says, "And in every version, you shoot me, and nothing happens." I put 9 rounds into him from 11 feet, which is the closest I have ever been to a man I was shooting, and nothing happens at all. He breaks my ribs with the flat of the sword, and then he breaks my left arm above the elbow with the pommel, and he does it without any hurry at all, and I go down on the stone in the worm's filth with my ears ringing. He crouches over me. He says, "My father held a dragon for 260 years and never once got a crowd." He says, "You got one in a month with a bag of chips, and I have never hated anybody in my life until I watched that." So I do the only thing I have left, lying on my back in a dragon roost with a broken arm, which is talk to the sky. I ask my crowd, and his, all 60-something million of us, the same question I asked him at my gate, and this time I ask it as a favor. I say, "Somebody tell him who is paying for that coat." Then I say the rest of it to his face. I say, "Prince, I am handing you a charter, freeholding. No collars, no bodies as payment. Your name on it, and your line keeps this rock. Kessin has it in his wagon, and it has been signed since yesterday." He stops. 600 years of Ashvale blood in that man, and he stops, on his heels, with a sword in his hand, and he looks at me with a face like a wall with a crack in it, and for 2 whole seconds he thinks about it. Then the curator kills him, and I am close enough to watch it happen to his face. He does not use a weapon. He does it with a line of small print. "Sponsored delivery recalled," says the letters, and the ash glass mantle comes off Malgrave's shoulders like water going down a drain, and it is gone, and Malgrave is a man in a shirt on a windy rock. "Channel of Prince Malgrave has been suspended," says the letters. "Contract terminated. Reason given, brand incompatibility." 41 million people watch a producer take a coat off a man's back in the middle of a fight, because that man was about to say yes to something that did not test well. Malgrave stands there. He looks at his own hands. Then he laughs, and it is a bad laugh, and he throws the sword off the spire, and I hear it hit stone about 9 seconds later. I could kill him then. Everybody watching knows it. Bell is behind him on the stair with a spear, and Vessa is in the roost doorway with the fat gun, and my ribs are broken, and I have wanted this man dead for a month. What I actually do is hand him the charter. Kessin brings it up the roost stair himself, at 71 years old, wheezing, with ink and a pen, and he lays it on a rock in the wind and holds it flat with his hand. Malgrave signs it. He signs away 900 years of collars in front of a network that no longer pays him a thing, and then he says the one line of his that I will keep. He says, "Tell your clerk to spell it correctly. The Black Spire is ours at the 11th hour of the day. 2,011 prisoners, 600 of them household guard, and Pell enters every single one before dark, because he says an unwritten prisoner becomes a corpse." 1,900 people came up that bridge with me. 81 died in the stairs, and 40 in the yard, and 111 are hurt badly enough that the infirmary women take over the prince's own dining hall. Vesa sets my arm on the prince's dining table with Kessin reading the picture book and a household surgeon watching, and she is furious with me in a way she has never been. She says, I could set this arm 9 times and never once get back the 4 seconds you spent talking. Then she puts her forehead against mine for about the length of a breath, and neither of us says anything, and 60 million people say everything. Auntie Moore tips 1 million coins with no message at all, which is not like her. I sleep for 4 hours in a prince's bed, which is a strange thing for a bucket boy, and then Tam wakes me because the letters have changed color again, and this time, they are not amber, they are white. And a white frame, Kessin tells me later, is a thing that has happened 9 times in the recorded history of the network. Standards and Ratings Board. Channel 3109 is under review for termination. Grounds: structural interference with a licensed production asset. Complainant: a licensed producer. Review is not appealable by the streamer. Under it, the curator opens his window, the room with no floor, the warm office voice. And for the first time, I hear something in it that is not patience. He says, "You are a very good show, and you have cost me 11 million viewers and 1 prince, and I am going to close you now." He says, "They will forget your charter in 9 months, and your name in 2 years, and there will be another Pit and another boy, and I will produce him properly." Then he says the last thing he ever says to me while he still owns the room. He says, "There is nothing on your little blue world that reaches me." And a line comes up in my chat in the same plain white as always, from the same name that has been there since the first 100 coins in a slag pit, when I was a nobody with a bucket and 41 viewers. Auntie Moore says that is enough of that, in the same voice she used when a hound was 4 strides from me and she had 100 coins to her name. Then she says, "Boy, sit down and listen to me." She says, "Ask them who opened your channel." So I ask. I sit down on the edge of a prince's bed with a broken arm and I ask the letters, out loud, who opened channel 3109. And this time the letters answer because the license holder has waved the seal. License holder, Moore, class viewer. Standing, original. Channel opened at the request of the license holder on the 19th day of the 11th month at the hour of the whip. Then Auntie Moore tells me the rest herself, and 44 million people listen to a story that most of them have apparently been arguing about for 200 years. She built the feed, not this feed, all of it. She says she was the first producer, back when the network was 9 worlds looking at each other through a window she made, and the whole point of it was that worlds should be able to see worlds. Then it made money. She says that part in 6 words, without any drama, and she says the rest even shorter. She says they took it off me and left me a viewer license and a pension. I ask her why she opened a channel on a slag pit, because that is the question, of every world and every hour, a slag pit under Ashvale on a Tuesday. She says she keeps 900 windows open at once, the way an old woman keeps 9 pots on a stove, and she was watching the pit because the light was pretty on the ramp. She says she saw a bucket boy step in front of a child who dropped a bucket. She says, "I have watched 200,000 years of heroes, and every single one of them was chosen for what they could do." She says, "I picked you for what you did when there was nothing in it for you, and it took my last 100 coins to buy you a gun." Then she says, "And I have been waiting 200 years for one of my channels to give me standing again, and you have just handed it to me on a rock in front of the whole network." Kessin already has the papers. He has had them since the night with the flower, and he asks her for 1 line in her own hand, and she gives it, and it is 9 words long. "Appeal filed," says the white frame. License holder Moore, standing original, contesting termination of channel 3109. Everything after that happens fast, and it happens in front of an audience that I still do not have a number for, because when the board convenes a hearing on standing, every channel in the network carries it, whether the streamer likes it or not. Kessin explains what that means while the infirmary women strap my ribs. He says the whole network will see this. He says that is not 400 million people. That is every viewer of every feed in 900 worlds, and they cannot look away because the board takes the screens. Mandatory carriage across 900 worlds, and the board convenes in 11 hours, and there is nothing at all for me to prepare because Kessin prepared it a month ago. They do not build a room for it. The board simply appears in my letters as a white frame with 3 seats in it and no faces in them at all. The curator appears in one window, Moore appears in another, I appear in the third, sitting on the steps of the Black Spire with a broken arm and my hair full of dragon filth. Vesa sits beside me the whole time on the same step. Kessin sits below us with a lap desk and 11 bundles of paper tied with string. Pell stands behind with the book. Tam sits on the wall with his arm in plaster and his radio in his lap, listening. The board reads the charge against me first. Structural interference with a licensed production asset. It cites the net, the crane, the ambulance, the tactical instruction from viewers, and a prince who signed a charter. The curator speaks for 19 minutes and he is very good. I want that recorded honestly, because a man is easier to hate when he is stupid, and he is not stupid. He says he never touched my world. He says every crate that ever fell on me was bought by viewers with viewer coin, that he only ever purchased for his own contracted talent, that a producer who cannot equip his own asset has no business producing. He says the boy is a wonderful accident, and accidents cannot be permitted to unmake the carriage terms, because the terms are the only thing standing between 900 worlds and 100,000 gods with hobbies. That line lands. I feel it land. The 3 seats do not move at all, and I watch the number of the total network audience sit there like a wall. Then Kessin unties the first bundle of string, and the sound of it is the loudest thing in 900 worlds. He is 71 years old. He was bought as a boy to copy documents because human hands are small and human lives are cheap, and he has spent a month writing down times. He reads the times out. That is his whole argument, start to finish, and it takes him 40 minutes and nobody interrupts him once. He reads the hour and minute the complaint was filed about the ambulance, and then the hour and minute the grand host of 30,000 left the capital, and the difference between those two numbers is 9 minutes. He reads the 72-hour suspension and the marching rate of a demon column with wagons, 19 miles a day, and he shows the board what any clerk can see, which is that the penalty was measured to end 9 hours after the assault should have finished. He reads the second complaint, about viewers giving tactical advice, filed 11 minutes after Grand Marshal Ith withdrew, and he asks the board plainly whether a penalty that arrives with an army is a penalty or a weapon. Then he reads the Vosk contract. The board has it because the board keeps everything, and Kessin has asked for it in the proper form on the proper paper, which nobody in 900 worlds has ever bothered to do. 41 streamers. He reads all 41 names. 41 people with their own blue letters and their own crowds, hunted under contract, and the contracting party on 39 of those 41 is the same licensed producer sitting in the window next to mine. The network audience number moves for the first time since the hearing opened, and it moves upward, and it keeps moving upward for the rest of the day. Then Malgrave testifies. Nobody asks him to. He simply opens a line, and the board allows it, because a suspended streamer still has a voice, and he stands on the bridge of his own castle in a plain shirt with his household guard behind him. He says, I am Malgrave, 9th of the Ashvale line, and for 6 years everything I did was chosen for me by that man. He says, my hunts, my wars, my armor, my 3 days early. Then he says the thing that ends it, in a voice with nothing in it. He says, when I was about to sign a paper that gave up my collars, he took the coat off my back in the middle of a fight and left me standing in the wind. Kessin closes his lap desk and says one sentence to the 3 empty seats. He says, the charge against my client is structural interference in a licensed production. The mantle was recalled off a mortal body, in a mortal fight, in a mortal world, by a producer. The board is silent for 11 seconds. Then all 3 seats speak at once, which Kessin says afterward is the sound of a rule being read to the person who wrote it. Finding: the recall of a delivered asset from a mortal in situ constitutes direct action by a producer upon a world. Prohibited. Not appealable. The curator's license is revoked. His 11 channels are released. His contracts are void, and the board notes in the same flat voice it uses for everything that the 41 terminated feeds cannot be restored, and that this is regrettable. Then it deals with me because a board is a board and there is a second charge on the sheet with my number on it. Finding, channel 3109 used the delivery apparatus as a kinetic weapon. Fine, 900,000 coins. Termination review closed. Channel restored, Tier 1, with a note on the file. 900,000 coins. My chat pays that fine in 11 seconds and then keeps paying. And Grape Soda writes, put it on my tab, and Sleepy Axe writes, cheapest ambulance in history. And then the third seat asks me a question that nobody in this hearing saw coming. It asks whether I want a producer license of my own. Everybody hears the question. 900 worlds hear it. A license means catalog access, sponsorship, deliveries from any world, a budget, and the right to open channels wherever I like. Vessa's hand closes around my wrist, the good one, and she does not say a word because she has read enough of my shopping list to know what I am about to do. I say, no. Then I say what I want instead, and I have been putting the words together in my head since the morning I read a bill for 11,400 marks. I say, there are 9 other provinces on this continent, and every one of them has pits like mine. I want a channel opened in each one. Unranked, viewer-funded, origin-locked, exactly like mine was on the day I was worth 41 viewers and a bag of chips. I say, do not give it to a hero. Open it on whoever is at the bottom of the ramp. The board takes 4 seconds. Then it says, approved, 9 channels, license holder Moore, and Moore makes a sound that I am fairly sure is an old woman crying into a cup of tea. Then the board says the thing I did not think about because I am a bucket boy and not a producer. It says, note, new channels will draw audience from existing channels in the region. My number starts falling while I sit on the step. 44 million, 38, 29. Every hour, as the new feeds open across the province, another few million people go off to watch somebody else at the bottom of somebody else's ramp. Grape Soda is outraged on my behalf for a full day. Then he stops, because he has found a girl in the 3rd province who fixes water pumps and swears at her overseer in 9 dialects. And he starts campaigning to buy her a leaf blower. I have never been happier about a number going down in my life. Vessa says it better than I can. She says, we are no longer the only story, which means we are no longer the only ones who get to be saved. Then, because nothing in this world is ever allowed to be finished, Pell brings me the road book. Somewhere in a room with no floor, a man who is no longer a producer spends his last 9 minutes of budget. The revocation takes effect at the hour, and a license that is dying is still a license until it dies, and there is one purchase a producer may make that does not touch a world with his own hand. He may sell to a sovereign. The Chamber of Ashvale is a sovereign. It has 30,000 soldiers left, a treasury, and a grievance. So the last act of the curator is a bill of sale, filed correctly, taxed correctly, entirely within the terms. 10,000 suits of ash glass mail from Catalog World 911, delivered to the Chamber's arsenal, paid for in full. 10,000 suits that shed fire and shot, walking up a road toward a workshop whose entire trade is fire and shot. Pell reads it to me off the road book with a face like a man reading a weather forecast for the end of the world, because a road book records what passes on a road, and 1,100 wagons have passed the 3rd milestone going north with a chamber escort. Kessin checks it 4 times, and then puts his papers down and says, this one is legal. He says, they bought it, they own it, and there is no clause I can find, and I have looked at all of them. Then the chamber sends its herald, and it is Assessor Sarn, who is my clerk on one piece of paper, and their officer on another, and he arrives with his brass scales and a face like a man being pulled apart by 2 mules. He reads it out. The Chamber of Ashvale does not recognize the Charter of Bucket. The Chamber requires the surrender of the fortress, the spire, the mills, the shops, and the human called Rook. He says the assembly of the Grand Host is complete, that they come in 9 days, and that this time they come in mail our workshop cannot touch. Then he lowers the paper and adds, off the record, in the voice of a man who has carried a bucket 400 steps, that he tried very hard to lose this errand. I ask him one thing before he goes. I ask him what the chamber pays for a body now. He says 9 marks, and he says it looking at the ground. He says they have not changed it, and I do not believe they ever will. So I go up on the wall at dusk for show hours in front of 29 million people, and 9 new little channels blinking away in provinces I have never seen, and I say the only thing I have. I say, they are coming in armor we cannot shoot. I say, we have 9 days, a workshop, a river, and a dam, and I have never once beaten anybody with a crate. Then I ask Grape Soda in front of everybody on the record, how much is sitting in the tank fund tonight? He says 1,940,000 coins. Then he says, why? I tell him why. I tell 29 million people why, standing on a broken wall with my arm in plaster, using Vessa's chalk on the stone so the crews can copy it down. 9 miles up the Ash River, there is a Legion Dam, built 400 years ago, to hold spring melt off the high pasture so the capital road would not wash out. It holds a lake 3/4 of a mile long. Below the dam, the valley narrows at the ford of Kell, and the ford is the only place an army with wagons can cross to reach Ashvale, and the ground on both sides of it is floodplain that has not been flooded in 90 years because the dam has been doing its job. Vessa says the numbers out loud so the whole province hears them. 40,000 tons of water, a drop of 200 feet over 9 miles, a man and 80 pounds of glass mail standing in 3 feet of mud. Then she says the sentence that goes on the front of Kessin's next book. She says, iron is heavy and mud is patient, and neither of them cares what your armor is immune to. Grape Soda understands about 4 seconds before anybody else. He says, you want the tank to break the dam. The sluice gates of a Legion dam are oak beams a yard thick in iron shoes, sunk in stone, closed for 90 years and swollen tight, and there is not a crane in this province that can reach them, and we do not have 9 days to dig them out. But we do have 1,940,000 coins in a fund that a troll has been filling since my second hour on this feed, and a tank costs 2 million. The chat closes that gap in 11 seconds. Then it keeps going for another minute out of pure spite, and the letters tell me, in a voice I will always hear as slightly nervous, that the fund has closed at 4,100,000 coins. Delivery approved. Vehicle tier, extraordinary. Sourcing from Origin World Earth. It comes down on the mustering yard of Ashvale on the second morning, and it takes out 9 flagstones, and everybody in the fortress runs to see it, including Gorm, who puts his bucket down for the first time in a month, and nobody says anything about it. It is old. It is a museum piece, painted green, with a maker plate in a language Kessin cannot place, and it smells like oil and cold iron, and it is the most beautiful, ugly thing I have ever seen. Then the letters give me the fine print, and Grape Soda has the worst 9 seconds of his long life. Ordnance is not offered on the civilian market. Main gun, inert. No ammunition available at any tier, in any world, from Origin World Earth. Fuel, 40 gallons. Estimated range, 90 miles. 2 million coins for a tank that cannot shoot. Grape Soda goes completely silent for the first time since the slag pit, and then he writes one line, and it is the only time I have ever seen him be quiet and be right in the same breath. He says, it does not have to shoot, it has to push, and about 9 million people work out what he means before I finish reading the line. 9 days. Here is what 4,000 people do with 9 days when they know exactly what is coming. Sella's mill runs at 900 pounds of powder a day, and she sleeps in the gallery. The lathe never stops. Every smith in 3 provinces is at Ashvale by the 4th day, and they are not making guns. They are making hooks. 900 grapples on 900 chains, 4 feet of chamber iron each, because a man in glass mail can shed a musket ball all day and cannot shed a hook and 2 people pulling. They make 900 more, then boat poles and mud shoes out of woven willow for our own people, and 60 pot throwers on the flood line, and 11 miles of white marker stone so nobody on our side steps into the water when it comes. We move the wire. Every roll we have, plus every roll we can buy, laid in 3 belts across the ford, and then buried under a hand of river silt, and Vessa charts every belt on a map and hands copies to 9 crew leaders. Mulgrave arrives on the 6th day with 600 household guards in plain iron and no producer, and he does not ask to command anything. He asks Pell where the entry desk is, and he stands in line with his men to be written in the book by name. Grand Marshal Ith does the thing that costs her everything. The chamber sends her the writ at last, properly sealed, 3 readings, all legal, and she reads it in front of her own officers and asks for clarification of a clause, and then another, and then she declines. They break her for it. 900 years of service, stripped in an afternoon, her 4,000 handed to a chancellor's nephew who has never held a line in his life. Before she goes, she sends me 1 line, and it is worth more than any crate I have ever opened. She says, the ford of Kell floods to the knee in spring, and the chamber's staff maps are 90 years old, and nobody in that host has ever seen this valley wet. The grand host comes up the valley on the 9th day. 10,000 men in ash glass mail, and the mail is beautiful, black and green and shining, and every one of them walks like a man who cannot be hurt because that is what they have been told. 1,100 wagons. 4,000 more of Ith's old host under the nephew, 900 cavalry, a chancellor in a covered carriage with the writ in a leather tube. They cross at the ford of Kell at the 6th hour in column in the dry, and it takes them 4 hours to get 8,000 men and most of the wagons onto the floodplain. I am 9 miles up the valley, sitting in a tank I cannot shoot, with Vesa on the hull beside me and little Fen in my chat, telling me for the 9th time that a tracked machine steers with 2 levers and hates a soft bank. Tam has the radio on the dam wall. Bell is at the marker line. Sella has 60 pot crews on the ridge above the ford, and every crew has its ranges chalked. At the 10th hour, Kessin, standing on a wagon in the middle of the floodplain under a white cloth with his speaking trumpet, reads the charter of Bucket out loud to 10,000 soldiers of the grand host. He offers it to every one of them, freeholding, no collars, bodies not accepted as payment at any rate, and a name in a book. He tells them where the marker stones are and what the white paint means, and that anybody who wants out has an hour. The chancellor has him dragged off the wagon and the trumpet broken. 900 soldiers watch that happen, and about 40 of them look at the ridge line and start doing arithmetic. And I know this because they are the 40 who came up the hill later. Then the chancellor's nephew forms his line for the assault on Ashvale, in the mudflats, in mail that cannot be shot, and he sends his cavalry wide to the west where the ground is soft, and Tam calls it in. I say 2 words into the radio. I say high water. Then I put a museum piece from another world into the sluice gate of a 400-year-old Legion dam at whatever speed a tank does on a stone apron, and the oak goes, and the iron shoes go, and the whole west gate of that dam folds outward like a barn door in a gale. The tank goes with it about 6 feet, and then the tracks bite stone and it holds, and Vesa and I are lying flat on the hull holding on to a rail, while 40,000 tons of 90-year-old lake goes past us down a valley that has forgotten what water is. It takes 11 minutes to reach the ford. Bell says afterward that you could hear it before you could see it, and that the sound was a lot like the sound Scarvath's breath made, which is the worst comparison anybody has ever handed me. It comes down the valley at the height of a man, and it does not have to be deep to do the work. 90-year-old flood plain, dry silt over clay, and 40,000 tons of water on top of it, and 8,000 men standing on it in 80 pounds of glass mail. Nobody drowns in 3 feet of water. That is the thing that nobody understands until they see it. They go down to their knees and then to their thighs, and the mud takes the mail and the mail takes them, and every step after that costs them everything they have. Then 60 pot throwers on the ridge start dropping 40-pound clay pots into a field of men who cannot run. And then 2,000 people come off the ridge with hooks, down the white stones, in willow mud shoes, into a field of the most expensive armor in 900 worlds. I am not going to pretend that part was clean. 900 grapples and 1,800 hands, and a hook does not care about ash glass, and a man on his back in the mud in perfect armor is a man in a coffin he paid for. It lasts 19 minutes, and then it stops being a battle. Kessin gets a second trumpet from a wagon and goes out onto the marker line, up to his knees, 71 years old, and he reads the charter again. 1,100 men take it in the first minute. Then 4,000. They stand up in the mud, and they unbuckle the most expensive armor in 900 worlds, and they leave it in the water, and they walk up the white stones toward the ridge with their hands empty. Assessor Sarn stands on a wagon with his brass scales and reads the chamber price list out loud to the surrendering host, because I ask him to, and because he is the only man there with the voice for it. 9 marks a body. 40 for a horse, 90 for a rider. He reads the whole list to 4,000 of the men it was written about, and then Pell sets up 2 entry desks on the ridge and starts writing their names down, and the writing goes on until after dark by lamplight. 11,400 names in the new book by midnight. The Chancellor signs the acknowledgement of the charter in his carriage with Kessin standing over him correcting his spelling. 409 of ours are dead by the end of it. I read every name at noon the next day off the smelter wall, which has run out of space and has been extended onto the gate arch, and it takes 2 hours and 11 minutes. Letters say viewers 31 million. They also say something else, at the bottom, in small print, and I read it 4 times before I understand it. A new viewer has joined. Handle, 1 coin, no license, no channel, no standing. He tips 1 coin and writes nothing at all. I know exactly who it is. So I say, on air, for the record, welcome, and I say it without any anger in it, because I have thought about this for 9 days. I say, you are a viewer now. Every single person in this chat is a viewer. Around here, that means you get a vote on the dares and no say at all in what anybody does about them. He never writes a word. He is still there. Most nights. I have stopped minding, the way you stop minding a draft in a room you built yourself. Osira takes the roost at the Black Spire and nobody argues with her. 9 drakes come back over the next month and she lets them stay, and the sky over this province belongs to nobody at all now, which is a new thing here. 9 channels are open in 9 provinces. A pump girl in the 3rd, a stable boy in the 6th, a woman who was sold for a debt of 9 marks in the 8th. Small numbers, 40 viewers, 900 viewers, growing. Grape Soda has adopted all 9 of them and campaigns for all 9 funds at once and is insufferable, and 9 Toes has opened what the chat calls the school, and Little Fen has 3 students, and one of them is Tam. Kessin has 11 students of his own in a room off the archive learning chamber law, and 4 of them are demons who came off the surrendered host, and he is teaching them to read times. Pell's book has grown to 9 volumes. He has copyists now. He starts every new volume with the dead, because he says the dead should be entered first, and the first 2 names in the first volume are still Bess and Bost. Gorm hauls slag for 11 months. Then Tam, who is 10 years old by then and reads well enough to argue about it, tells him that the count is finished and puts him on the water cart. That is not forgiveness, and nobody pretends it is. It is just the end of the sentence. Sella opens a noodle shop at the mouth of the pit. The chat funds the first one at 50,000 coins and then dares her to open 4 more, and she takes the dare and the double payout, because she has understood this economy faster than I ever did. The tank sits outside the first shop. It has no ammunition, 90 miles of range, and 1 job left, which is to be climbed on by every child in this province. Grape Soda calls it the greatest purchase in the history of the network, and nobody argues. And Vesa gets her room, which is the only item on any of my shopping lists that took a full year to deliver. It is off the main shop. Stone walls, 1 window, a bench, her lathe, her calipers, the piece of bronze collar with 940 stamped around it sitting on a nail above the door, and a door that locks from the inside. She hands me a key on the day it is finished. I say, it is your room, you keep the key. She says, it is my room and there are 2 keys, and this is the second one, and it took me 211 years to have anything worth a second key. Then she paints both our names on the shop door, hers first because she got there first, and 11 million people watch a demon woman with a brush write a human's name under her own in a province where that was illegal a year ago. We are still not a normal thing here. There are villages up the North Road where a demon woman and a human man walking together stops conversation dead. Give it 9 years. Kessin says the law is fast and the road is slow. I still do show hours, twice a day, morning and dusk, up on the wall where the crowd can see me. because a habit that saved 4,000 people is a habit worth keeping. I do not have 44 million anymore, and I never will again. Some nights it is 9 million. Some nights it is 1 million. When the pump girl in the third province is doing something interesting, I am the second most watched ramp on this continent, and I go up on the wall and tell them what tomorrow's work is anyway. Because here is what I actually own, after all of it. Not the crates. The crates were somebody else's money and somebody else's world, and they stopped mattering the day we could make a cartridge without asking anybody. What I own is a wall with names on it, and a chalk recipe that 100 people copied, and a book with 11,000 names in it, and a boy who wants to fly, and a woman with 2 keys. And every time a bucket goes up a ramp anywhere in this province now, it goes up because somebody is getting paid for it, and the person who counts the trips writes his own name at the top of the page.
So that is the story of a bucket boy who got handed a gun by a crowd and spent the big money on a workshop instead. Look at what actually turned it. The reloading press, the chalk recipe on the smelter wall, an old clerk who wrote down what time things happened, a crowd that could not send him a nail for 3 days and taught him instead, and one goddess who picked him because he stepped in front of a kid who dropped a bucket when there was nothing in it for him at all. Gifts run out, skills do not, and neither does a name written down where everybody can read it. If your people can make the thing themselves, you never have to wait for somebody in the sky to buy it for you.